The protagonist of the story, Lucas, is kneeling in tears before his wife, Bella. He begs her consent to divorce, bows to the floor. Bella smirks contentedly at seeing his humiliation and agrees to divorce. She sits relaxed on a chair, looking down at Lucas bowing. Pushing a man with her foot, she wants to know what he can offer her in response to the divorce. Lucas can barely hold back the tears that come to his eyes, biting his lips at this humiliation. His life is not going well, and the reason for this is his family, namely his hated father. All day long, the old man drinks or gambles, raises his voice at his already adult son. After his mother's death, Lucas lived with him because he was his only family, although the man did not pay any attention to his son. Lucas is forced to take a lot of part-time jobs outside of office work so as not to go broke. He also works in a diner as a waiter to feed himself. One day, he sees a family, a father and a young son who have entered their diner. The child is naughty and spills water. The father turns to Lucas for a towel or napkins. Despite the fact that the child is not aware of the inconvenience caused, the father does not yell at him, but takes care of him. He understands that he is jealous of such family closeness of other people. At home, his father, once again drunk, asks to lend him 10 million won. Lucas is shocked by such a request, as it is a lot of money for him. He tries to reason with his father, but he promises to return the borrowed in double. He talks about the emergence of a new currency that should completely change the future, and in which he wants to invest. Lucas replies that he cares more about hard-earned money than a dubious chance of making money. The father does not want to hear any excuses. He admits that he has always been hopeless, drank, and raised his hand against his son. However, now he asks Lucas for another chance to change. The father asks for it so desperately that tears come to his eyes. Lucas is annoyed, but he cannot refuse his father and eventually agrees to his request. But he wants too much to save their family, to try to make it normal. He wants to trust his father for the last time and lends him money. He actively thanks Lucas, hugs him, and promises that his son will not regret it. Nevertheless, his joyful cries do not inspire Lucas with much hope for success, and for good reason, since very soon the last relative of Lucas also leaves for another world. He holds his father's funeral, and thoughts about the currency he bought fade into the background. Lucas's father died in a car accident. According to experts, he lost control due to the rain and died on the spot. Lucas feels sad about losing the last member of his family, but at the same time, he feels free. In mixed feelings, he spends his time drinking a drink, as his father did not long ago. Left alone, he reflects on the strangeness of his life. On the TV, which he watches at dinner, they show an interview with a young man. Despite his young age, he has already achieved great success and is working in the investment field. Lucas ponders whether that big success is buying a house or something else. However, it turns out that we are talking about large assets in the amount of 4 billion Korean won, which makes Lucas cough. The host asks the young man what he invested in, and he reveals that he chose Bitcoins, the same currency that Lucas's father was talking about. Lucas puts two and two together and realizes that the man on screen has made a fortune doing something he didn't believe in. He looks at his phone lying on the table, wanting to make sure he heard everything correctly, and downloads the online wallet. The host reflects on how profitable it would be to invest in Bitcoin at the very beginning of his journey. The interviewee is sure that no one expected such an active price increase. But if someone had invested in it at the time Lucas's father did, his investment would have grown 2,500 times. Lucas has a huge amount of money on his account, and he almost faints, unable to believe what he saw. The rise in the price of Bitcoin has driven many around the world crazy, and Lucas feels like he's barely holding on. He has 25 billion won in his account, which is 2,500 times more than his initial investment. Lucas spends the entire evening shocked, rechecking his online wallet every now and then. To refresh his head, Lucas rides his bike down the street despite the cool weather. Even after a while, he still can't believe that he has more than 20 billion on his account. At home, he can't stop checking the market price, which is changing at an incredible speed, so he decided to change the scenery. The amount in his account increased by several hundred million more overnight. Lucas cannot decide whether he should sell his assets now because he already has a huge amount. He returns to his dilapidated house, torn apart by contradictions. He thinks that since he has been thrifty all his life, he will be able to be patient. But curiosity is stronger than him, and Lucas decides to check his savings once again. He prays in unbelief, covered with sweat, because the amount changes once again. During the time he went to clear his head, his assets increased by another $2 million, which means that he already has $2 billion. Despite the increased wealth, Lucas still goes to work in the office. The head of the department to which the hero belongs reflects at a meeting about the company's possible customers. Employees of the company discuss possible risks from cooperation with a clinic located in Busan. The head of the department suggests that someone from the group will need to be sent to Busan on a business trip. Except for Lucas, no one takes the initiative in this matter. Everyone averts their eyes. The head of the department tries to find out if Lucas is sure, as he looks very tired. But Lucas just spends all his time researching his assets. So Lucas says that everything is fine. The head of the department decides that Lucas will need another person to help him. Then Sue, one of the most beautiful and popular girls in the company, volunteers to go with the hero to Busan. Lucas's colleagues look at her, dreaming of spending time together. Other male employees immediately start shouting that they also want to go on a business trip. But the boss decides that 2 people are enough, and Lucas and Sue will go to Busan. The heroes go to their destination by car to solve business issues. Sue says she loves to drive the car her brother sold her last year. Busan is Sue's hometown, and if she used to go home often, now she has a lot of work and sports on weekends, so there is no time. They chat for a while, and Lucas wonders what to do with his life now that he has a lot of money. The trip takes place at a leisurely pace and pleasant communication between Lucas and Sue. When they stop to take a break from the road, Lucas buys the girl coffee. He is surprised that his colleagues are so eager to discuss work issues with Sue, and she thanks Lucas for his help. Sue fidgets, embarrassed, and averts her eyes, her cheeks flushed. Finally making up her mind, she turns to Lucas to see if he wants to go shopping with her in the evening. Sue hasn't gone shopping for a long time, and she also has something to talk about. Lucas thinks about her suggestion, but decides that it would be nice to distract himself. Therefore, he agrees, and later the 2 of them go shopping. First of all, they go to a clothing store and look at business suits. Lucas, who has lost the habit of shopping, does not understand why he cannot order the same thing on the internet, but at a more pleasant price. Sue suddenly offers Lucas help in choosing and buying a suit, and Lucas is surprised by such an offer. Clothes are a kind of bribe because the girl has an awkward request. Lucas has enough money for shopping, so he demands that Sue stop delaying the awkward conversation. Blushing with all her might, Sue chooses her words and finally asks Lucas to act as her boyfriend in front of her parents. He is stunned, but Sue explains that the younger sister already has a partner and the parent is rushing Sue into a relationship. Blush at such an unexpected request, Lucas tries to comprehend it. But still, he agrees to help his colleague, and in the evening they go to a restaurant. Sue's parents are very happy to meet their daughter's chosen one. They communicate politely with Lucas, make jokes, and try to please him. They wonder if the characters work for the same company, and Lucas confirms it. Sue's mother is curious about how they became friends, and Lucas explains that they became close when he taught her the basics of their work. This answer suits the parents, and they continue their peaceful meal. Lucas recalls a completely different dinner with his ex-wife's relatives in terms of emotions. They were negatively and aggressively disposed towards him, raised their voices. They also asked a lot of questions about the hero's parents, who had already died by that time. Inundating questions about money and real estate, they pressured Lucas that after the wedding, he would be obliged to help them with money. Lucas felt terrible pressure and contempt in his direction from them. The opinion of Lucas himself was of no interest to anyone, and he did not manage to impress the relatives of his ex-wife. Sue's parents warmly and kindly accepted him and made him feel peace. The girl's mother asks if Lucas liked the food, and he actively praises her. The experience he shares during his fake date with Sue is completely different from the one he has already experienced in his previous marriage. After the meeting, they warmly said goodbye to Sue's parents, who were pleased with this meeting. The girl's mother subtly hints to her that she does not need to return home to spend the night. Lucas reflects that only money helped him not to feel uncomfortable that evening because his ex-wife trampled on his confidence. Sue's mother, laughing at the girl and her chosen one, asked them to give birth to their granddaughter first. Lucas is embarrassed by the sweat of such a warm welcome. He hears Sue's parents reasoning that he is not bad for their daughter. After meeting their parents, Lucas and Sue go for a walk on the beach. Sue bows to Lucas in embarrassment and apologizes. She is very embarrassed about the evening, but Lucas immediately tries to calm her down. The girl replies that she saw his tense expression due to bad memories from her parents' questions. Lucas realizes that Sue knows about his previous marriage and rushes to calm her down. His parents treated him kindly, and the food was delicious, so he was not offended. But since the girl is still regretting, he suggests that she smooth out the situation by walking around interesting places. Sue immediately plunges into thinking about how to plan the best route. She is so lost in her thoughts that she walks ahead of Lucas and he calls her to slow down. However, he realizes that Sue is just very interested in the task and exhales with a chuckle. Sue's mother's words that she is very stubborn get proof. Suddenly, Sue's eyes turn to something on the beach and she has an idea. She points Lucas to the place where she wants to take him. Looking at the seat makes Lucas feel uncomfortable and grins nervously. Sue's interest turns out to be a fortune teller's tent located nearby on the beach. When the heroes decide to tell fortunes, Sue gets a good result as she has good and pure energy. The fortune teller describes the girl on the positive side, both as a colleague and as a person. Sue is very happy that luck will help her in life. Nevertheless, the fortune teller draws attention to the fact that quite recently, Sue missed a chance for something. The fortune teller says that she needs to be braver and not hesitate. Lucas listens to their conversation out of the corner of his ear. He absolutely does not believe in these fortune telling. The fortune teller says that Sue will still have another chance, and she must be strong and attentive. Lucas can barely hold back a sigh at the fortune teller's words. However, Sue persuades the man to take part in the fortune telling. According to the girl, the fortune teller is trustworthy, but Lucas has no questions that he would like to ask her. He tries to shift the focus to Sue's interests again, but the tenacious gaze of the fortune teller is already riveted on him. The first thing that the unknown woman tells about him concerns the hungry times that Lucas went through, and this shocks him. He is dumbfounded that the fortune teller knows about the poverty in which he lived in his youth. However, Lucas, according to the fortune teller, was able to catch great luck, and she even envies him. The fortune teller advises Lucas to travel around the world and experience a lot, because it will allow him to multiply his luck even more. She assures him that Lucas can live as he wishes, without looking back at the past, and he will succeed. Sue casually tries to find out how lucky Lucas is in his personal life. Lucas immediately plunges into thinking about the words of the fortune teller and has no idea how to change his lifestyle. However, he was still pleased to hear good predictions. When it comes time to pay for fortune telling, Lucas is horrified by the large amount, although he has hundreds of times more on his account. Nevertheless, they leave the fortune teller in high spirits. Sue invites Lucas to eat a CEO with her at the market. She takes the still, thoughtful man by the jacket and leads him. Lucas doesn't know what to expect from the future yet, but he's starting to feel interested in it. In total, the heroes need 4 days to establish work in Busan, after which they return from a business trip. Lucas returns from a business trip to his abandoned apartment. He immediately rushes to the computer to check the Bitcoin rate. At first, he is horrified that he did not sell the assets sooner because he lost 200 million. But very soon he earns 300 million per hour. He exhales with relief, but still does not understand what to do with the assets. He is mentally exhausted because he spent the whole weekend watching the Bitcoin rate. He is tormented by doubts about when to sell assets and whether it is worth doing it at all. But then the weekend passes and he goes back to work in the office. During lunch, he listens to colleagues discuss real estate investments. As a result, Lucas was never able to rest properly, and therefore he is not focused enough. Now he has 40 billion won in his account and is wondering if the price of Bitcoin can rise even higher. Colleagues curiously try to find out how their trip to Busan went with Sue, and the man says that he is calm. Older colleagues make fun of Lucas about this in a friendly way. Lucas's colleagues return to the discussion of investments again. The manager, whose deputy Lucas is, says that he is thinking about investing in Bitcoin, and this makes Lucas shudder. Men reflect on the fact that they should have invested earlier, then they would have earned more. They decide to study in detail the issue of possible investment in Bitcoin. Conversations about cryptocurrency are becoming more and more lively. This time, Lucas focused his attention on the conversation. After hearing the discussions of his colleagues, he decides that Bitcoin will continue to grow. This makes him, consumed by greed, want to wait and not sell his assets yet. He continues to keenly monitor the changes in the price of Bitcoin in the market. Lucas is shocked that the price of Bitcoin has fallen a lot recently, and he has lost 6 billion won. During the next break at work, he goes out to get some fresh air. The lost money haunts him. Lucas cannot come to his senses. The amount he lost in waiting could be his salary for 140 years of work. He immediately grabs his phone to check his assets. Lucas is seized with excitement and ponders whether to sell his bitcoins urgently. No need to be greedy anymore. He already has more than 30 billion won. However, at this moment, Lucas is approached by colleagues eager to find out what he is doing. Lucas flinches at the surprise, not expecting to be interrupted. Lucas's colleague chuckles when he sees that he is studying the Bitcoin rate. He asks if the man wants to invest in Bitcoins, and Lucas sweats nervously as he comes up with an answer. Colleagues are sure that since Lucas does not look well, then there are some problems with investing. He does not name the real amount, but his colleagues still support him and wish him good luck. Lucas sighs heavily, thinking about whether the price of Bitcoin will really go up again. He asks his colleagues if they have seen the recent price collapse. The men look at each other, grinning and shake their heads. Lucas tries to find out what is the reason for these smiles, and one of his colleagues says that he does not follow the news. It shows the current Bitcoin rate, and Lucas is completely speechless. The price jumped up again, and quite strongly. He even begins to cry from relief, and his colleagues courageously support Lucas. They convince us that the real takeoff is just beginning. It turns out that one of them bought Bitcoins and has already earned more than 1 million won. However, Lucas is still terribly afraid of another fall. Men's confidence, however, gives him hope that perhaps he can still wait. And literally the next day, there is a sharp jump in the price of Bitcoin. This is shaking the world community, and everyone is talking about cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is becoming a store of value that surpasses gold. And on the next day, the cost of Bitcoin reaches an exorbitant figure. As a result, Lucas's current assets exceed 100 billion won. When a man sees the total amount, he becomes hysterical. His heart is beating wildly. He is sweating. He cannot breathe normally. Therefore, all Lucas can do is try to breathe calmly and cradle. The man forces himself to calm down, reminds himself that this is not his money until he sells his assets. Now it was really time for him to make a decision. He could not postpone any longer. Therefore, Lucas is tormented by whether he should sell everything or wait further. Not used to such amounts, he is afraid of making the wrong move. Greed overwhelms him in the blink of an eye, convincing him that he can earn more. Dark thoughts overwhelm Lucas. He wants to earn tens of billions just sitting still. Therefore, submitting to these thoughts, he first decides to wait a little longer. But then the voice of his father, who once convinced him that everything would work out, appears in his memory. Lucas looks at a framed picture of his father on the closet. Once upon a time, my father believed that buying a new currency was his chance to become a good person and parent. When his father spent his time gambling, he always promised to buy Lucas new clothes and a bag if he won big. He'd been putting his life off all this time, and Lucas knew it was time to make a change. The next day, Sue is actively working in the office, typing important documents. She stretches with pleasure to stretch herself from sitting still for a long time. Sue points out that Lucas never showed up in the office after they returned. The girl approaches one of the managers and presents the results of her work, and he thanks her for her work. The manager tells the girl that Lucas took a day off because he is not in the office. Sue hopes that nothing serious happened to the man. Meanwhile, Lucas finally leaves the house and goes shopping. The first destination for it is the car interior. The salon employee asks if the client has any wishes. Lucas feels uncomfortable, but one car still catches his attention. It turns out to be a recently released white Ferrari model, created for both city driving and sports. Lucas decides to buy it, but when the salon employee starts talking about the payment options, he interrupts him. He holds out a bank card, offering to make a purchase immediately, since he plans to pay for his new car in a lump sum. The day before, Lucas sold his assets and earned $100 million, or 100 billion won. Now Lucas is young and rich, a very pleased man. However, he does not immediately understand what to do with such a huge amount of money. He decides to buy a car first, and now he will have to wait for it to be delivered from the salon. Having spent a huge amount of money by former standards, Lucas leaves the salon. He is belatedly panicked that he has spent almost $500 million won. Nevertheless, he took the first step on the path of pleasant and important expenses. Once he made this list, having the opportunity only to dream of wealth. And the next item on this list is the purchase of a luxury apartment. At the real estate agency, the employees actively welcome Lucas. Lucas reveals that he needs a spacious apartment in a new building overlooking the Han River. Since this is usually a very expensive property, the agency's employees are very interested in such a client. Therefore, Lucas and the realtor go to see one of the options. This is a very large and newly built complex, life in which will cost the hero 2.5 billion won, The realtor tells the man about the bonuses of the territory, such as walking paths, gardens, and a swimming pool. A great advantage of the residential complex is also the gym. The apartment they will be looking at is on the 11th floor, and the realtor calls Lucas to follow him. As in many Korean apartments, the door opens with a key card. Stepping inside, Lucas feels overwhelmed by the size of the apartment. It is so large that you can arrange morning jogging on it. The realtor tells the shocked client that the apartment is fully furnished with furniture made of the highest quality materials. The girl shows 2 bathrooms, each larger than the apartment in which Lucas now lives. He jokes that there is no need to be afraid of mosquitoes and noise outside the window, and the realtor replies that this is the advantage of high-rise buildings. For Lucas, this place is so chic that he would be willing to live in less comfortable conditions. He opens the window and is speechless in front of the view of the river. It is so beautiful and impressive that a man admires it out loud. The realtor asks for the client's opinion and offers to show other options, but Lucas is satisfied with this apartment. He turns to the girl accompanying him and says that he is taking this option. A real estate agency prepares a contract for him, which Lucas immediately signs. Lucas is offered to pay an initial fee and a brokerage commission for check-in. However, the man takes out the suitcase he brought with him and replies that he will pay the entire amount at once. He opens the suitcase and clarifies that the amount will be paid in cash. As the girls look on in horror at this amount of cash, Lucas asks them to provide a check for the brokerage fee. Meanwhile, in the office where Lucas works, the manager flirts with his colleague in the pantry. He took her to a restaurant the day before and offers to try a better place. He bribes the girl with a night look, grinning, and the girl succumbs to his flirtation. Suddenly, the flirtation is interrupted by Sue bursting into the pantry, who quickly approaches manager Dan. After waiting for Dan's girlfriend to move away a bit, Sue steps closer. She comes almost close, wanting to talk to a man about something important. The man is stunned by such an offensive and does not understand what questions Sue can have for him. Sue looks at her colleague menacingly and asks if he knows where Dan lives. Dan doesn't understand why a popular girl like Sue needs Lucas' address. The girl replies that she wants to visit him because she is worried about Lucas's long absence from work. Dan involuntarily misses the thought of whether Sue is so worried about all her colleagues. However, he doesn't know where Lucas lives either, but he can call him and ask. As a result, he contacts Lucas in a messenger, and he agrees to give them the address. Looking at such an active reaction, Dan wonders if Sue is interested in his senior colleague. As Dan looks at her, Sue almost hums with joy at the upcoming meeting. After a day's work, Sue and Dan buy Lucas some gifts and go to his house. Sue thinks about what Lucas's house could be like, as she is very curious. She thinks that he has a small apartment, since he lives alone and probably neat, clean. Dan also tries to imagine what Lucas' apartment is like. He thinks it's minimalistically furnished because he still lives where he lived before the wedding. They arrive in the neighborhood where Lucas lives, and he doesn't look the way they expected. Once in the apartment, Dan and Sue recoil in shock and horror. Lucas thanks them for coming and apologizes for having to hide behind feeling unwell at work. The apartment they find themselves in turns out to be dirtier and mustier than Dan and Sue thought. However, Lucas does not worry about what is not tidy in it as he is preparing to move. Dan winces in horror at the fact that the apartment looks more like a warehouse than a house and stinks a lot. Lucas explains that this has nothing to do with the house, just a sewer leaking nearby. Sue's fingers touch the wall, which is abundantly covered with black mold. Tears come to the girl's eyes from the thought that he has been living alone in such an apartment all this time. Dan surreptitiously watches Sue tremble with emotion. Therefore, he decides to help Lucas with the move and help collect the boxes. Sue supports this idea. Lucas clarifies if everything is definitely fine because the characters can get dirty, but for them, it is nothing. The hero is grateful to his colleagues for their concern and help. They go out into the parking lot, and Dan looks at one of the cars in surprise. Of course, his attention is focused on the latest Ferrari model. He doesn't understand what such a luxurious machine is doing in this place. Dan thinks he'd like to take a closer look at her, but he's embarrassed in front of his colleagues. Lucas, noticing his interest, calmly approaches the Ferrari and offers to put the boxes in it. Dan and Sue are speechless from the unexpectedness of this proposal. At first, Dan thinks that Lucas rented this car to move. And when the hero says that this is his car, Dan is covered in sweat from shock. The heroes think that Lucas has inherited. Otherwise, they cannot explain where he got a car for $400 million. However, Dan can only think about how he wants to ride it. Lucas suggests that his assistants look at the apartment they are moving to. Dan and Sue certainly agree to this. They are very curious to see Lucas's new residence. However, there is only one passenger seat in the car, and someone alone can go with him. Sue is sure that she will have to go separately because she is the youngest. However, when she is already preparing to offer it, Dan says that he will go separately. The girl is surprised by such an offer, but Dan says that he still needs to pick up the car. He walks to the car, promising to follow Lucas and Sue. Nevertheless, he cries because he also wants to take a ride in a Ferrari. And he made this decision in order to let Sue spend time with the one she likes. Lucas addresses Sue, saying that it was the first time they were alone since the trip to Busan. Sue reveals that her parents thought Lucas was the person she planned to marry soon. In response, Lucas teases the girl about whether he should play the role of her husband, which drives Sue into the red. Sue is a little embarrassed, not knowing how to talk about the topic that worries her. Lucas watches her awkward attempts and chuckles without malice. The girl brushes it off, not wanting to spoil the moment with awkward questions, although she is very curious to know more about Lucas's ex-wife. The man thanks her for the sensitivity and care that she and Dan show, without asking difficult questions and showing patience. Blushing, Sue replies that she will definitely ask questions when Lucas is ready. She tries to find out where he is moving, but Lucas wants to keep the intrigue going. At this time, there is a telephone conversation between the director of the company and an unknown woman. She says that she is sorting out old things, and she herself is looking at the photos. One of these photos depicts Maria and Lucas during their wedding. The woman's fingers aggressively squeeze the photo, crumpling it. The girl talking on the phone turns out to be Maria herself, Lucas's ex-wife. 6 months after the divorce, she decides to return to work in the office where Lucas works. Lucas's new car races through the streets, sparkling with its cleanliness and well-groomed. It is led by Dan, who was allowed by Lucas to do so, and he is so happy that he is crying. Lucas asks him to be careful not to kill them both, but Dan is too happy to hear him. He has a question for Lucas and wants to know if he can ask it. To Lucas's surprise, Dan asks him about how the man feels about Sue. Lucas doesn't understand why his colleague is asking such sudden questions, but Dan says he's just curious. Lucas does not see a catch in the question. He is trying to figure out what to say. He reflects on how Sue is kind, capable, and cares about others, and is generally a good girl. Dan tries to find out if this is all, but Lucas doesn't know what else his colleague wants to hear. At work, senior colleagues pounce on him on breaks with questions about the new car. Everyone noticed the Ferrari in the parking lot and decided that Lucas had made a fortune on the investment. Lucas says he increased his capital by reinvesting his earnings and pledging his property. Lucas's colleagues, on the contrary, lost some of their funds on Bitcoins. Therefore, they turned to Lucas for advice as a more successful investor. The men are sure that Lucas is well-versed in the issue of investments and makes new plans. However, Lucas does not know what to say to them, invent a legend, or tell the whole truth. Lucas replies that in order to invest successfully, you need to have the heart of a beast. He understands that this issue could confuse his colleagues and still decides on the truth. However, colleagues understand the advice in their own way, deciding that psychology, not technique, is important in this matter. The manager asks if Lucas invests in other types of cryptocurrencies, and the man says that he has invested in 2 more. After buying a house and a car, he reinvested the rest of his assets in cryptocurrency. However, he's afraid to give advice, lest he be held responsible for the outcome. Lucas's choice was such cryptocurrencies as Ripple and Ethereum. They're brand new, so colleagues wondered why they made the choice, and Lucas says he thinks they're reliable. Ripple supports international transactions between banks, while Ethereum supports transactions using blockchain technology. Lucas believes that these cryptocurrencies will be of interest to the media and investors. Lucas has really seriously studied the issue of new cryptocurrencies. Meanwhile, Sue cleans up the women's restroom. When she thinks of Lucas, she hears the other girls talking. They discuss gossip about Lucas and the Ferrari he bought. No one believes that he is that rich. Sue isn't surprised that the rumors have already spread throughout the company. One of the girls assures that Lucas got into loans for the sake of the car, and many also discuss that he gambles and loves to drink. One of the girls is disappointed. She had no idea that Lucas was such an unworthy person. Sue, not wanting to hear Lucas's slander anymore, approaches the girls. They are covered with sweat from Sue's abrupt intervention, interrupting their conversation. Sue is surrounded by a dark and threatening energy, and she really wants to know who is spreading such rumors about Lucas. At this time, his ex-wife comes to the office where Lucas works. Maria tries to find out from the manager, who recognizes her, where Lucas is. The man tries to discourage her and says that Maria's ex-husband is not there. He offers to give Lucas messages if the girl wants. But then Lucas enters the office with boxes full of documents. It wobbles slightly, and the boxes tilt dangerously, threatening to fall. Maria holds the boxes ready to collapse, and Lucas thanks her, and then realizes who helped him. He recognizes the woman in front of him and feels the first wave of panic. Maria warns that Lucas should be more careful in the office. She wants to know how her ex-husband is doing, but Lucas does not believe the woman for a single second. Memories of their honeymoon trip pop up in his head. Then Maria scolded him for a long time for booking the wrong hotel that did not suit her. Lucas tries to justify himself, saying that he chose his hotel based on the reviews of other guests, but the girl is still dissatisfied. Maria does not want to listen to him. Throughout the marriage, the girl humiliated him and made him guilty of everything, convincing him that she had shown him mercy with their marriage. Therefore, Maria is sure that she still has such power over her ex-husband. However, Lucas is no longer the same as he used to be, even if their meeting unsettled him for a while. Maria says that she wants to give him some documents, and the man sighs long and heavily. And then, with a loud thud, he puts the boxes on the floor, which makes Maria shudder. Colleagues turn to them, trying to understand what is happening. Calmly looking into Maria's eyes as he never did, Lucas takes the documents from her. And then he leaves, pretending that this meeting did not excite him at all. Maria gets angry from such a reaction and bites her lips, trying not to yell at the man in front of colleagues. She leaves the office, remembering that Lucas couldn't even look her in the eye before, and after the divorce, he changed so much. She is angry that Lucas bought a Ferrari after the divorce, and if she had been patient in her marriage, she could have taken the car. But now, since she missed this chance, Maria wants to create a new one. She returns to her office in tears, looking very miserable. Colleagues immediately rush to her to support her after meeting with her ex-husband. Maria immediately makes Lucas look like a monster, lying that he shouted and humiliated her. This performance is silently watched by the head of the department. She sighs, not sharing the worries of her colleagues. She sees Maria's pretense. Meanwhile, Lucas is quietly working in his office, reflecting on what happened. He knew that sooner or later Maria would return to work after their separation. He wondered how he would feel when he met the girl again, but everything turned out to be not so scary. The manager approaches him from behind and asks if Lucas is really okay. He calls the younger one to the roof, where a colleague immediately rushes at him with hugs. He thanks Lucas for the advice that allowed him to make a good profit. Lucas does not understand what the reason is, and a colleague suggests checking the quotes. It turns out that Ripple has risen 70% in price since the morning. Lucas wonders how much money he does not have on his account now, and he is trying to count. It turns out that Lucas's assets are already $98 million. Colleagues, having invested in Ripple, earn several of their annual salaries. The manager thanks Lucas for everything he has done for them, but Lucas believes that it is their own responsibility. Colleagues are trying to find out how much he himself invested in Ripple. Lucas decides not to tell the truth, but to come up with something reliable. So he says that he has invested $1 billion in Ripple and Ethereum. Everyone is surprised at how much Lucas has invested and earned from it. The hero refuses to give advice, since investment is the personal responsibility of everyone. However, he himself says that he will not sell Ripple yet, but will wait longer. Rumors that Lucas hit the jackpot with cryptocurrency are quickly spreading throughout the company. Lucas's success at such a young age is gossiped all over the office. People also discuss that Lucas's colleagues are following his lead and investing successfully. However, recently someone has been spreading bad rumors that he beat his ex-wife and took money from her. Maria overhears her ex's colleagues decide that someone is spreading bad rumors specifically to smear Lucas. She is furious that her plan fails and that people protect Lucas instead of denigrating him. In irritation, she almost betrays her presence and hurriedly leaves. In the place where she stood, only a crumpled drink cup remained. Lunchtime comes and the heroes go for a break. Sue sits thoughtfully by the window in the cafe, looking out the window as if waiting for someone. The men present in the cafe look at her and openly admire her. However, Sue looks very nervous and agitated. She turns pale. Dan appears in the cafe and calls the girl by name. He carries a tray with their drinks. He asks how long Sue has been waiting, but Sue says that she has just arrived. Dan summoned her to the cafe to tell her something special about Lucas. Dan wants to ask her a question first and then discuss the rest. He asks Sue what she thinks about the recent rumors about Lucas's gambling addiction and abuse of his wife. Sue sharply exclaims that all these rumors are ridiculous and she does not believe in them at all. Someone is spreading them maliciously. This answer suits Dan, and he decides to clarify something else with the girl. Finally, Dan asks Sue if she's in love with Lucas. This causes Sue to blush profusely and be speechless in embarrassment. She screams and stutters, trying to convince Dan of his words. Dan chuckles and asks the girl not to pretend. He understands everything and wants to help. Dan tells the girl to go to Lucas right now and confess her feelings. At this time, Lucas is on break again and receives hugs from satisfied colleagues. Trusting Lucas's instinct, his colleagues decided to wait with the sale of assets and did not lose. Lucas is not very happy that there are much more people thanking him. Colleagues begin to thank him because thanks to Lucas's advice, they managed to solve their financial difficulties. After rumors about Lucas hitting the jackpot, most of the company's employees got involved in the cryptocurrency game. Soon, everyone who trusted Lucas and invested in Ripple made a huge profit. Colleagues call Lucas a financial god and confess their love to him. One of his colleagues is trying to figure out how much Lucas has earned, and Lucas is trying to get out of it. At the moment, Lucas has $578 billion in his account. In fact, for such money as Lucas, you can buy almost any company. When Lucas invested in new cryptocurrencies, but thought that their quotes would rise. However, he could not even think that in a month the situation could become so crazy. The hero counted on human greed, but the growth is still too fast. The girls in the office also join their colleagues to get investment advice from Lucas. The hero replies that right now it is a little risky to invest. Recently, the price has skyrocketed too much, which means it can fall a lot. The girls thank for the advice and ask what other objects for investment are available. Maria is infuriated by such active attention to her ex-husband. Out of irritation, she locks herself in the bathroom and kicks the trash can. Maria is angry that everyone praises someone she thinks is a blockhead. The girl's pride is hurt, and she comes up with a plan to use Lucas. She wants to destroy Lucas' reputation and get his money. Lucas, on the other hand, calmly studies the chats on his phone and sees that everyone is also discussing cryptocurrency on it. However, suddenly he receives a notification that shocks him. Maria writes to him, asking how things are as if nothing had happened between them, writes that she was wrong, and then asks him out on a date. Lucas wants to delete useless correspondence, but then Sue calls him. He immediately picks up the phone, interested in the reason for the call. Sue, worried, says that nothing special happened. She sits at home in her pajamas, hugging a plush toy, and replies that she just wanted to talk to Lucas. He asks if Sue herself is resting, and the girl says that she has recently returned from training. Lucas plans to go shopping the next day, as he threw away the old furniture. Sue is eager to join him on this shopping trip. The man hesitates to answer, and this makes his colleague worry. However, after a couple of seconds, he makes an appointment with her in the afternoon at the mall. They wish each other good night, and then Sue screams in delight into her pillow, trying to come to her senses. At the wrong time, a conversation with Dan and how he pushed her to confess pops up in the girl's memory. Sue isn't sure if she'll be able to do it, but she wants to try hard. The next day comes and Lucas hurries to the mall. He arrives early enough that it makes him sigh heavily. He is about to wait for Sue at a cafe, but suddenly Sue calls out to him. She also arrives ahead of time in such a hurry to see Lucas. She literally beams with joy, and the men turn around after her. Lucas draws attention to the fact that the girl calls him informally at work. He gives permission to do so, after which Sue calls him to go inside the mall. The girl surreptitiously watches her companion, admires him. She is happy that Lucas agreed to take her for a walk. The two of them go to the mall for the shopping that Lucas has planned. Meanwhile, the forgotten Maria is waiting for Lucas in a cafe and is furious that he is late, although he does not plan to come at all. There are a lot of people in the mall, and Lucas and Sue are politely greeted by the employees. The girl notices that this is the first time she is alone with him, not for work. She imagines that it could be a date with Lucas. Suddenly, Lucas draws the girl's attention to something, inviting her to take a look. A man chooses new blankets for himself and finds a very soft one. Sue is happy to see her companion so excited during a shopping trip. This is the first time Lucas has seen such soft and cozy blankets, because he is used to using only thick and heavy blankets. Therefore, enthusiastic, he decides to buy 3 sets of blankets at once. Before he has time to make a purchase, he already finds something new. This time, Lucas' attention is drawn to a new cordless vacuum cleaner. Then there is a refrigeration cabinet, in the door of which there is a touchscreen. The washer and dryer is also an important element of the interior in Lucas's new home. The hero's attention is also attracted by the sofa, which can adjust the angle of inclination. For the first time in his life, Lucas spends money without thinking, and this makes him happy. The man admits that the mall is an interesting place when you are rich. Lucas feels like he turned on the cheat code in the game as a child. The hero decides to ask Sue if she is bored with going shopping with him, but the girl is delighted. However, in addition to fun, Sue feels many other strange feelings, mainly because of Dan's words that she is obliged to confess her feelings to Lucas. The girl understands that she really can't hesitate forever. She wants to try to tell Lucas about everything, but when she begins to confess, Lucas interrupts her. They shudder with embarrassment, look into each other's eyes. Sue suggests that the man speak first, but Lucas gives up the right to her. However, the girl still persuades him to take the floor first. Lucas's words make Sue stare at him in surprise. She even asks if Lucas really meant what he said. All this time, sitting in a cafe waiting for Lucas, Maria clenches her fists in fury because he did not come to the meeting. During the next break, during the working day in the office, employees rejoice at the growth of the Ripple rate. Men loudly cheer themselves and each other. Lucas's company takes a look at this from the outside, noting that there are even more people investing in cryptocurrency. One of the screamers is a man who used to ridicule cryptocurrency, calling it a type of gambling. However, in addition to the rise in the price of Ripple, the price of Ethereum is also rising, so Lucas is very happy. The man thinks that huge profits from cryptocurrency can turn even those who criticized it into fanatics. Greed, according to Lucas, unites people, but no one knows the result. At a happy moment, investments can bring huge profits. But if the price falls, then a person can lose everything to the last one. And when the losses begin, you end up in a personal hell. Lucas admits that he is no exception, and he also has to obey these rules. Even his father taught him that winning at the gaming table does not mean getting money, but you can get money at a completely different point in time. Lucas believes that you need to overcome greed and wake up, because you get money when you get up from the gaming table. In work chats, they discuss investments and thank Lucas for valuable advice, and this infuriates his colleague Jack, who has long considered cryptocurrency an unworthy business. He believes that Lucas is just lucky and doesn't really understand anything. Jack is sure that he is the only one who is engaged in real investing. He is happy that he earned 100 million won in a month and believes that soon his life will turn upside down. The man dreams of buying a luxury apartment overlooking the Han River and a sports car. Jack also wants to marry Sue, with whom he has been in love for a long time. In the chat, Lucas makes an important statement about cryptocurrency. He says that he is going to sell everything. A senior colleague thinks this is stupid because Lucas could earn much more. Jack aggressively types messages in the chat where he says that Lucas's words are complete stupidity and no one should sell cryptocurrency now. He believes that since Lucas decides to miss out on such a benefit, then he is a complete amateur. Lucas replies to some of the messages, not going to persuade anyone. After that, he puts the phone aside and thinks about his next steps. Now he wants to meet with his boss to discuss an important issue. He goes to work in an office that is in the mood for a serious conversation. The man goes up to the right floor and approaches his manager. He asks if the manager has a minute to talk. The manager notices a roll of paper in Lucas's hands. He realizes that Lucas wants to tell him something really important. Sighing heavily, he thinks that the conversation will be about dismissal. Therefore, he calls Lucas to go to another place, to the roof where they usually spend breaks. The manager congratulates Lucas on his increased wealth. After all, Lucas had been rich before, and now he was supposed to become even richer. And the manager himself earned money for drinking for the rest of his life. He decides to push Lucas to talk about what he cares about. Lucas clutches the papers with the statement in his hands, nervously starting a conversation. A manager does not want to say goodbye to a good employee who also gives the right advice. Lucas asks for a vacation for 2 weeks and asks if it is possible to take it. The news that the application is in Lucas's hands for a vacation and not about dismissal pleases the manager. The manager thought that since Lucas had made a lot of money, he could have already retired. But the hero himself is not yet ready for this. He did not even think of resigning. He recalls meeting with Sue, telling her that he planned to go to the States for about 2 weeks. He thinks about what to do with the money he earns and decides that he needs to gain more experience and knowledge. Lucas wants to take the opportunity to study a little in America. Because of his confession, Sue is hesitant to confess her feelings to Lucas. She only wishes Lucas a good time on the trip. The manager agrees to sign Lucas's vacation papers. Lucas asks his senior colleague if he can continue to live like this. He has made a lot of money from cryptocurrency, but he doesn't know what to do next. He doesn't have a hobby or a dream because he didn't have time to think about it before. Lucas realizes that he has always been jealous of people who have a dream. Those who were professionally engaged in singing on stage and enjoyed music. Those who have been involved in sports since their youth and built their careers on it. Those who spent their time painting because these people had dreams and passions that he didn't have. The manager says that not all people can have a dream. And not having a dream is as normal as being an ordinary person. Lucas had never thought about it and did not know that this could be normal. The manager tells Lucas that as a child, he dreamed of becoming a professional golfer. His parents supported him as they liked golf. Therefore, the man was preparing to become a professional from the age of 10 with the support of his parents. He had injured himself more than once. His hands were covered with bruises and calluses. But as a child, it was enough for him just to hold a stick in his hands. The manager was happy as a child thanks to his dream. However, soon enough, he found out what was hidden behind his dream. He learned that a lot of money had been spent on tuition fees and the use of the field, which was ruining our family. As a result, the man gave up on his dream, but now he lives quite well. Now he has another dream, and he strives to make it come true. Now he only wants to go to a baseball game with his family. He recommends Lucas not to get too hung up on his dream. In his life, he will be able to get everything he wants. The manager advises Lucas to enjoy life and do what he wants. Lucas respectfully listens to the words of his senior colleague, draws conclusions for himself. He decides to move step by step to formulate new dreams for himself. The manager finally decides to ask Lucas himself. He is very interested in how much money he actually earned. He promises to keep the information secret. In order not to answer directly, Lucas clarifies how much an apartment in the Gangnam district now costs. Having finally estimated how much came out, he whispers the final number in the manager's ear. The manager is so shocked by the answer that he is covered by sweat. He asks incredulously if Lucas really has such means. The manager smiles at how ridiculously rich Lucas is. After all, Lucas's current assets can be imagined as 1,000 apartments in Gangnam. After receiving a vacation, Lucas sets off on his American journey. The last time the man flew to a seminar in Germany, but it was a long time ago. Now he can afford comfortable conditions for the flight. He is warmly greeted by the flight attendants, and Lucas is delighted with such a respectful attitude. He has experience of flying only in economy class, where it was cramped and uncomfortable. Now, for the first time, he flies first class, sits in a comfortable chair, and can relax. Suddenly, he hears a woman's voice on the side discussing design issues. In the next row sits a beautiful brunette who is talking on the phone about the development of the automotive industry in Korea. The girl notices that Lucas is watching her. Without any embarrassment, he waves his hand to the girl as a sign of greeting. His neighbor ends her business conversation with a request to send documents by email in case of urgency. She apologizes to Lucas for talking on the phone in the cabin, but the man is understanding. After studying Lucas with her eyes, the stranger finds him quite amusing. She pulls Lucas a business card and introduces herself as the executive director of an automobile concern. Her name is Chloe. Lucas is surprised that Chloe is so young and already an executive director. He introduces himself to the girl, but says that he did not bring business cards. The position of a man confuses Chloe because she did not think that an ordinary employee could afford to travel first class. Lucas almost immediately explains that now his capital mainly depends on investments. On the plane, Lucas and Chloe are served a great lunch, steak, and wine. In the man's eyes, this food literally glows, his mouth watering in anticipation. He cuts a juicy steak with a knife and sends a piece of meat to his mouth. The taste of the dish shocks him from the first bite. Lucas eats something so delicious for the first time. Lucas squeezes his eyes shut with pleasure, delighted with the combination of meat juice and sauce. He also likes wine very much, and in general, the whole meal was a pleasant surprise for him. As Chloe eats her portion quite calmly, Lucas wonders if he can ask for more wine. Chloe still doesn't understand where an ordinary employee gets the money to fly first class. Lucas notices that his neighbor is looking at him very carefully. Their eyes cross, and Chloe feels uneasy that her surveillance has been discovered. Lucas unexpectedly compliments her good posture, which surprises Chloe. He says that he looks at the girl also because of her confident posture, skills in handling a fork and knife. Chloe is very embarrassed by such detailed compliments addressed to her. However, she quickly calms down and remains satisfied with such attention. Lucas examines an image of a beautiful girl standing next to a car. It's the concept of a car ad for the company that Chloe runs, and he finds it interesting. The girl actively says that they create cars for both the Korean and American markets and wonders what kind of car Lucas himself has. When the girl learns about Ferrari, she is again lost in guesses about who her neighbor is. While Chloe talks about her plans for sports and electronic cars, Lucas remembers that he drove her company's cars. The girl's very interested in hearing feedback, but having received criticism of technical features, she feels awkward. Apparently, Chloe did not expect such a detailed response and comments about the shortcomings. Lucas involuntarily notices how much he has changed because he would not have expressed his thoughts so boldly before. He thinks about the confidence that money gives him, what he has received. To diffuse the situation, he remarks that Chloe seems to like cars very much, and she says that this has been a hobby since childhood. She loves to drive different cars, and in the UK, she recently had an interesting experience with the Mini. The girl actively talks about her impressions, and Lucas thinks about how nice it is to see a person who is passionate about his work. However, throughout their flight, Chloe repeatedly bombards him with various information about cars. Lucas couldn't rest from her chatter during the flight. Therefore, he is very happy to arrive at the San Francisco airport. She and Chloe shake hands, and she asks to be contacted when Lucas returns to Korea. The girl smiles and wishes Lucas a good trip. Pretty exhausted, Lucas wishes her all the best in return. He decides that next time he should behave more modestly and not make acquaintances. After taking his luggage, the man finally leaves the San Francisco airport. He finds himself in an unusual environment and opens his mouth in surprise. Looking at people of different races and with different skin colors, he finally realizes that he is really in America. Suddenly, someone from behind loudly calls the man's name. Lucas turns around and sees Charlie, his old friend, running towards him. The men shake hands and make fun of each other. Charlie is Lucas's closest friend, sharing all the hardships with him when they lived together during college. After that, he managed to move to the States and settle down here, and America changed the man quite a lot. Charlie invites Lucas to lunch, and the man is surprised when he managed to book a table, to which Charlie laughs that you have to eat hamburgers in America. Meanwhile, in Korea, Maria tries to calm her anger at dinner and destroys her salad with a fork. She is furious that Lucas is not only ignoring her, but also managing to cheat on her. She almost growls because she had to give up her pride and write to her ex-husband, whom she despises. When colleagues ask about what happened, Maria jokes that she is thinking about her ex-husband. She immediately starts saying the worst things she can think of about Lucas. It intertwines gambling, debts, infidelity, and domestic violence. However, she is immediately interrupted by a manager from her department who says that it is Maria who pays too much attention to Lucas. She smirks, noting in surprise that if she broke up with someone, the story would end. Thus, she hints to her colleagues that they should not trust Maria's words, and the girl almost explodes from such a hint. The manager adds that she tried to stay out of their personal lives before, but the rumors Maria spreads don't correlate with Lucas's reputation with the company. She openly accuses Maria of being jealous and trying to ruin Lucas' life. Maria is at first speechless from such a rebuff and does not know how to respond. However, her acting abilities immediately get out to the maximum. She begins to cry loudly and rushes out of the office. The manager rolls his eyes at this behavior and sighs heavily. In a rage, Maria runs into the women's restroom so as not to scream right in the office. She kicks the trash can with a scream and calls the manager dirty words. However, she is going to ignore it and endure it further. Maria also succumbed to the fever for buying Ripple and was able to make good money on it. She is sure that she will get very rich and will be the last to laugh. At this time, Lucas's colleague Jack, who shouted loudest about Ripple not being sold, brags at halftime that he was right. He mocks the skills of Lucas, who was cowardly and didn't make any more money. Jack convinces his colleagues not to sell, but to buy Ripple and tells him to trust. Colleagues from Lucas's office watch his screams from the sidelines. One of them was worried when Lucas sold his assets and didn't know what to do next. Due to the fact that profits continue to grow, it is difficult for him to fight greed. All day long he thinks about investments, since quotes are growing. The manager, in response to this, calmly declares that he sold all the Ripple that he had in his assets. This shocks his colleague, since investments bring huge profits every day. But the manager shrugs his shoulders. He trusts Lucas, who took the bold step of selling. In response to the suspicious look of the younger, he philosophically notes that the cryptocurrency will continue to grow regardless of the actions of people, and you can buy more. But in order to sell assets that are growing in price on time, you need skill. So when Lucas said he was selling all of his assets, he felt confident to do the same. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Lucas and Charlie are sitting in a burger joint, and a cute waitress brings them their order. Lucas really likes the burgers from the first bite, and Charlie is pleased with it. He sympathizes with Lucas's expensive trip, but promises to make his stay at home comfortable. Lucas is touched that his friend is willing to take care of him, even though he knows nothing about his financial situation. Suddenly, someone calls out to the men who are having lunch, and Charlie turns to the source of the sound. They are approached by a guy and a girl of non-Asian appearance, both blonde and speak English without an accent. In America, Charlie is sometimes called by his nickname, but he doesn't mind as it sounds cool. Their new interlocutors are Chris and Helen, and Charlie became friends with them after moving. They sit down to eat together and discuss Charlie's work projects, which make a great contribution to the automotive industry. Charlie develops software for self-driving cars. Chris is the foundation of a startup in this field. He is developing an autonomous driving system for installation on trucks. Helen also has her own startup company. She designs and manufactures clothes and shoes from environmentally friendly materials. Lucas is delighted that both of his new acquaintances are CEOs. They discuss that opening a startup is very difficult, like climbing a snow-capped mountain. The path consists of trying to implement your idea by any means and overcoming obstacles of varying complexity. But the moment the idea gets its embodiment, you feel that it was all worth it. Lucas admits that he respects Chris and Helen very much for such courage. He looks at new acquaintances with admiration. Chris replies that ideas are good, but they need talented people like Charlie to implement them, because thanks to his programming skills, he can implement any ideas. However, he immediately makes fun of his friend, noting his great love for hamburgers. Looking at their verbal skirmish, Lucas is pleased to note that only when he arrived in America, he was already able to meet the founders of his companies. He already feels that his trip to the States is fully justified by such an interesting experience. In the evening, they arrive at the apartment where Charlie lives. It is located in an ordinary apartment building. It's clean and well furnished enough, which Lucas didn't expect. He learns that the rent for such housing is about 4 million won, or a little more than $3,000. Charlie explains that real estate in the United States is more expensive than real estate in Korea. Especially against this background, real estate in San Francisco stands out. He opens the refrigerator and throws a can of beer at his friend. Charlie thinks they should rinse their mouths after eating and discuss Lucas's plans for the trip. Charlie knows his friend too well to understand that Lucas would not come to the States just like that. Lucas smiles contentedly, glad that his friend still understands him well. Sipping one can of beer after another, the men discuss what has happened during the years of their separation. Charlie is very happy about Lucas's divorce from Maria, whom he never liked. Lucas regrets going through the experience, but Charlie notes that he hardened the man. Nevertheless, Charlie is glad that his friend has become more confident and healed thanks to successful investments. He says that in America, many have hit the jackpot on cryptocurrency, and some even create it themselves to enrich themselves. Charlie suggests that Lucas create his own cryptocurrency, and Lucas is interested in this issue. However, Lucas still has another plan, and he asks Charlie for help. Charlie is interested in how he can support an old friend. Lucas's plan is that he wants to start his own company. Charlie believes that this idea came to Lucas because he drank too much. However, Lucas became seriously interested in starting his company after meeting Chris and Helen. To explain to a friend what underground rocks can be, Charlie talks about 3 important components of startups. The first component is capital, that is cash and other assets. The second component is a unique idea that would make a startup stand out in the market. And the third component is the abilities of the creator and representative of the startup. Even with money and an idea, the director can destroy the project without having the ability to manage. And vice versa, having abilities but not having the initial capital, you can fail. Lucas reflects on what qualities a CEO needs, whether they include professionalism, intelligence, and energy. According to Charlie, it is not easy to run a company, and if you have money, it is better to invest it. His friend's words make Lucas think about choosing a new life strategy. He decides to ask Charlie how to invest in companies correctly. After a detailed discussion of all the intricacies, the next day Lucas and Charlie set up a business meeting at a burger joint. It turns out that they invited Chris, whom Lucas recognized the day before. Chris learns during the conversation that Lucas has decided to invest in his startup. Men laugh at the fact that choosing a burger restaurant as a place for a business meeting is definitely an original decision. They discuss Chris's startup, about which Lucas has gathered all the information he needs. It turns out that the company has high growth and technological capabilities, and therefore has already received an investment offer from a large Korean corporation. Chris tries to insist that they have a lot of offers, but Lucas believes that he is actually hesitant. Such a guest surprises the American, and he shudders at Lucas' words. Companies interested in Chris's startup demand good terms for themselves, but unfair for Chris. Lucas, on the other hand, wants to partner with the startup, not absorb it. The initial offer to buy 10% of the shares for $500,000 shocks the American. Offering his investment terms, Lucas seems confident in his capabilities. Chris, after listening to him, wants to check the paperwork first to make sure Lucas can afford the investment. At this time, Charlie is eating burgers quite calmly, confident in the success of the deal. Chris carefully examines the papers, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. As a result, he offers to sell Lucas 10% of the shares for $700,000. Charlie immediately jumps into the conversation and asks Chris not to inflate the price, because he originally wanted $400,000. When Chris asks him not to interfere with the negotiations, Charlie points out that he was the one who advised Lucas to invest in his friend's startup. He makes his offer of 20% of the shares for $900,000. Charlie knows very well that due to the development of a new technology, the American has an acute shortage of capital. A large Korean company wants to take over his startup, and if they don't come to an agreement, Chris will simply lose the right to run his business. He assures his American friend that Lucas will not do the same. He will take part of the shares as part of a fair investment deal and will not interfere in the management of the company. Therefore, he recommends that Chris carefully consider their offer and see a great benefit in it. Chris swallows nervously in response to his words, but realizes that he has no choice. He holds out his hand to Lucas for a shake and announces that they are now partners. Lucas, as an investor, will look forward to the company's growth. When they go outside and he looks at the signed papers, he thinks that regardless of the results, this is a good experience. He is very grateful to Charlie for his help and support in a new business for him. Charlie's knowledge is much more extensive than he expected, and he is well versed in the internal affairs of companies. Therefore, Lucas decides to repay him for the opportunity. He talks about his strong love for his friend, but he only brushes it off in embarrassment. Lucas asks to recommend a few more companies to invest in. Charlie laughs that he can't stop thinking about work, and Lucas really thinks about how things are in the office. Meanwhile, Chloe, who was on a plane with Lucas, learns that an American startup has rejected their investment offer. It turns out that it was her company that wanted to absorb Chris's business. An employee of her company reports that their plan failed. The girl is stunned that Chris sold the shares to a new investor. But Chris is not the only one, as several other companies preferred to work with a private investor rather than with Chloe's company. The girl frowns upon hearing that this unknown investor is one person. Usually she is more perceptive, but here she managed not to know some major player in the investment market. She orders her employee to find out as much as possible about this investor in order to rebuy his shares. Now, Chloe's goal is to find her rival, but she does not yet suspect that Lucas is it. And at the same time, around the world, the price of Ripple begins to fall at a tremendous speed. This drop is actively discussed in Lucas' work chats. Everyone is in a panic. Lucas's colleagues begin to blame Jack, who persuaded them to invest in Ripple, for his financial losses. The fact that his colleagues urge him to take responsibility makes Jack feel pressured. Many of the company's employees lost several million won in a week. This altercation is watched in horror by Maria, who also suffered heavy losses, although she boasted so much that she was more successful than Lucas. Jack immediately starts yelling at the others that they shouldn't have blindly believed his words and that they are to blame for their losses. Everyone is very disappointed in him, since the man was very active in forcing everyone to refuse to sell cryptocurrency. One of his colleagues grabs him by the collar and shakes him properly, starting a scuffle. Dan, who didn't believe Lucas's words and didn't sell the cryptocurrency on time, feels bitter about the defeat. He looks thoughtfully at the sky, trying not to despair from what is happening. Dan regrets that he succumbed to a fit of greed and did not listen to the advice of his friend. He decides to sell all his assets now, while there is at least some chance to make money and not completely fall into despair. He sighs dreamily, Dan curious about what Lucas is doing there while they are going through difficult times. At the same time, Lucas is hiding in a destroyed building, reloading his pistol. He is covered in sweat and dust, breathing heavily and listening to the footsteps outside. There are several such buildings on a large territory, so he hopes that he will not be found immediately. But the enemies are close and he is forced to open fire to protect himself. He yells at Charlie behind him that if this continues, they're both dead. But Charlie is already lying almost dead, face down in the ground. He apologizes to Lucas for not being able to help him and let him down. Before Lucas can rush to him, he receives a series of shots in the back. He falls to the ground next to Charlie, who screams and calls his name. The man who shot Lucas in the back stands behind quite a while, watching the men. Suddenly, he pulls out another weapon from behind his back, which turns out to be a frying pan. He begins to beat Lucas and Charlie on the ground with a frying pan, forcing them to fully admit defeat. As a result, exhausted and beaten men can only lie down and regret what happened. It turns out that all this time, Lucas and Charlie have been playing a computer game. Lucas is very happy that a friend helped him invest in several startups. In gratitude for this, he decided to give a new apartment to a person who supports him so much. At first, Charlie refused, assuring that he did not help Lucas out of some kind of self-interest. However, Lucas found a way to change his mind and show his appreciation. The apartment he had given to Charlie had been furnished with the latest technology. It had a powerful computer, various game consoles, and slot machines. Such an apartment could not help but conquer a man at first sight. Therefore, Charlie accepted her on the condition that Lucas would continue to live with him. During another game, Lucas tells his friend that he is thinking of going on a trip to America. Charlie is surprised at the length of his friend's vacation, but it turns out that Lucas has agreed with his boss and extended it. Charlie doesn't usually get to travel, but he thinks Lucas's idea sounds interesting. Suddenly, a thought comes to his mind that he urgently wants to tell Lucas. He asks a friend to do him a favor, and Lucas agrees, not even knowing what is going on. Smiling slyly, Charlie explains that his request is related to Lucas's journey. Lucas regrets that he agreed to his friend's request from the very beginning. He planned just to go on a trip to one of the cities. But now he has a company, namely a lovely American. And Lucas can't relax on the bus because Ellie uses it as a pillow. Ellie is the younger sister of Charlie's colleague, and it was he who asked to take the girl on a trip. She is 23 years old and has just graduated from college. He asks a friend to take care of his companion, and Lucas is very embarrassed by this. He is distracted from thoughts of unexpected difficulties by Ellie's insistent voice. She leans against the window, very excited that they have reached their destination. That destination is sunny Los Angeles. A lot of attention is paid to their company as the beautiful Ellie attracts people's eyes. But Ellie's attention is absorbed by Lucas, who, like herself, found himself in Los Angeles for the first time. Ellie is very excited and looking forward to new experiences. Lucas is surprised by the girl's easy attitude to traveling alone with a man. He decides that this is because Ellie is American. It is also possible that due to the fact that the girl is younger than him, she may consider Lucas to be something of an uncle. Noticing that Lucas is deep in his thoughts, Ellie actively waves her hand in front of his face. She loudly calls the man's name, forcing him to listen to him. The man is embarrassed that he didn't hear a word and apologizes to an annoyed Ellie. The American says that since Lucas has no travel plans, they will follow her schedule. Lucas agrees to everything Ellie has come up with for the trip, and Ellie has already thought out a whole program with a visit to a bunch of attractions. For example, they visit the Warner Brothers film studio and take a lot of pictures in various locations. And of course, do not forget to go to the pier during sunset. After asking one of the people to take a picture of them, they pose together for a picture as a souvenir. As a result, after walking for a day, Lucas and Ellie decide to have dinner at a restaurant. They order food and wine to celebrate their trip and raise their glasses in toast. Ellie hopes that Lucas wasn't too embarrassed to take her with him for company, and Lucas replies that he enjoyed spending time with the girl. He understands that he would not have explored the sights so much on his own. The young people discuss the purpose of Lucas's trip to America and the man talks about his desire to expand his knowledge and get acquainted with a new culture. Ellie says that she wanted to get good memories before getting a job, so she planned the trip. The American studied hard and was able to find a job on Wall Street, and therefore she has the last opportunity to spend time carefree. Lucas is amazed that such a young girl has already been able to find a job on the main financial street of the world. In the wake of such amazing discoveries, Lucas wants to drink another glass. He woos an American woman and gallantly fills her glass with wine. He wishes Ellie to fulfill her goal of working with really big money and to find and fulfill his dream. The girl listens attentively to the wishes of her companion and smiles contentedly. The two touch glasses, and Lucas expresses his wish to one day turn to Ellie as an important financier on Wall Street. After dinner, they check into the hostel where they are staying and are surprised that there is no one else in the room except them. Ellie expresses the idea that it turns out that even in such places, there are not always people. She puts her suitcase against the wall and slowly sinks onto her bed. She then looks playfully at Lucas and expresses her joy that they are alone. Lucas shudders at such frank flirtation and freezes in place. His gaze involuntarily slides over the seductive body of the girl. But before his thoughts lead him too far, he coughs embarrassedly and asks not to joke with him like that, even to diffuse the situation. After a while, they turn off the lights and settle down on a bunk bed, after which Ellie wishes the man good night from the second tier. He politely wishes her good dreams as well, but he is still excited. Ellie's flirtation almost made his heart jump out of his chest. As an Asian, he was not used to such an overt display of interest, and therefore it was difficult for him to pretend to be calm. He can't deny that Ellie is a very beautiful girl, but she's the sister of Charlie's girlfriend, and he doesn't want to get him in trouble. So he decides to just continue to treat Ellie like a travel companion and takes her to the pool bar the next day. People in bathing suits relax both in the water and at the bar. Ellie, who comes to the bar, attracts many glances because of her beauty. However, she does not pay attention to people and hurries to approach Lucas resting in a sun lounger. Lucas looks embarrassed at his companion, who, approaching him, takes off her towel. The girl stays in a swimsuit, which very favorably emphasizes the curves of her body. She leans closer to an embarrassed Lucas and suggests that he go swimming. The girl actively splashes in the water, easily swims across the pool. Lucas himself at this time sits on the side and just immerses his feet in the water. Even emerging from the pool, Ellie looks very impressive. She is pleased with the pleasant swim and is happy to approach Lucas. Lucas tells her that he doesn't really know how to swim, so he prefers to just rinse his feet lightly. Ellie immediately offers to teach Lucas how to swim and pulls him into the water. Lucas tries to refuse and is covered with embarrassment. He understands that if Ellie continues to show him signs of attention, he will definitely be carried away by her, so he tries to keep his distance. Lucas still politely tries to refuse and says that he wants to return to the hotel. Suddenly, 3 guys approach them from behind and rudely discuss Ellie's beauty out loud. One of the guys suggests that Ellie drop Lucas and play with them. Lucas looks at the guys who are trying to roll up to Ellie, who is frowning at this. Suddenly, he notices that one of the trio is not paying attention to Ellie. On the contrary, as soon as he catches Lucas's eye, he winks at him. Lucas is horrified when he realizes that they are trying to roll up to him as well. The guys continue to actively call Ellie to go with them to the bar. She refuses because she already has a company, and the guys laugh at it. She tells the guys to leave as soon as possible before she calls the guards, and this causes them to become aggressive. One of the guys tries to forcibly grab Ellie's hand, dissatisfied with her threats. Lucas immediately rushes forward and intercepts his arm, preventing him from touching Ellie. He stands in front of Ellie and convinces the strangers that they should not touch the girl without her consent. Ellie is impressed that Lucas has behaved like a true gentleman. She is embarrassed by the feelings that overwhelm her at the sight of a man's broad back. At this time, Lucas is worried about what to do next because, although he decided to protect the girl, he is not used to fighting. The guys disgruntledly exchange words with each other and want to run into a conflict. Though Lucas is still trying to shield Ellie with himself, she gently pushes him aside. She calmly and boldly goes forward to strange young people. Crossing her arms over her chest, she orders them to apologize and leave. Then they will pretend that nothing happened. Guys don't understand why they should apologize if they haven't done anything wrong. Ellie is pleased with the answer, but the smile on her lips looks quite threatening. She immediately draws the attention of those who molested them to the person behind their backs. It turns out to be the local guard. He reminds the guys that they have already been warned about the harassment of customers, which is why they will have to move out of the hotel. Several more colleagues join the guard, and they quickly take the molester away. On this occasion, Lucas and Ellie decide to have a cocktail at the bar. They are delighted with the bar and the taste of the drinks, which makes the bartender smile contentedly. Coupons for free drinks were given to them as compensation from the hotel. Lucas considers this to be luck, and Ellie cannot disagree with him. The girl thoughtfully lowers her gaze into the glass with the drink and turns to her companion. She is curious to know more about Lucas and asks him to tell her about himself, his family, and his life in the past. Lucas thinks about the answer and says that his mother died early and he lived for a long time with his father, who loved gambling and ruined it, and then completely died. He tells the story of how he graduated from college, got a job in a company, and married a woman who worked in a neighboring department. After telling the story of Lucas and Maria's lives, Ellie goes into a rage. She calls Lucas's ex-wife a witch and scolds her loudly for the pain she caused the man. Lucas did not expect that she would scold his ex, but unexpectedly, such a reaction turns out to be pleasant for him. But Ellie immediately notes that she understands why Maria wanted to marry him. She believes that Lucas listens carefully to the woman's words, respects her, cares about her. Therefore, based on these thoughts, Ellie is sure that it is easy to fall in love with him. Lucas feels embarrassment and a pleasant warmth in his chest from the girl's words. In order not to cross the line established between them, Lucas hurries to end the evening and suggests that they go to their rooms. He wearily collapses on the bed, trying to recover from his time alone with Ellie. Lucas lies with his arms outstretched, thinking about everything that has happened. He thinks that he should be more conscious because Ellie almost knocked him out of his stride. To distract himself, he decides to check the price of the cryptocurrency and pulls out his phone. With displeasure, he notes that the prices of many cryptocurrencies have collapsed. He reflects on how big his losses would have been if he hadn't sold his assets. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door and Lucas is very surprised that Ellie is behind it. Lucas thinks that something has happened to her and hurries to open it. Behind the door of the hotel room stands Ellie in a seductive nightgown. Lucas is speechless from what he sees and stops breathing for a few seconds. He nervously asks the girl what happened since she came to him, but Ellie suddenly puts a finger on his lips, telling him to shut up. She enters the room and comes close to Lucas without embarrassment. Ellie is seductive and beautiful, so she literally shines in Lucas' eyes. She persuades Lucas to spend the night in the same bed, and when they lie down next to each other, she decides to get his opinion on the trip. This time they are in Las Vegas, and Lucas liked him much more than he imagined. He liked Santa Monica Beach for the beauty of nature, and Las Vegas for the splendor of a noisy city. Ellie laughs at his words. She shares Lucas's point of view. The girl suddenly rises on the bed to move closer to Lucas. She rolls over on her stomach and puts her hands under her head, asking the man if just talking at night is enough for him. Lucas mentally prays not to relapse, but replies that the night is good and suitable for talking. Ellie wonders why Lucas doesn't openly show his sympathy and desire. Lucas thinks that he wants to be honest with the American. He replies that he is not sure that he is ready for responsibility after intimacy with a woman. After divorcing his wife, he lost interest in dating, but he knows for sure that he does not want consequences if their meaning is only short-term pleasure. He also gently notes that he doesn't particularly want to hurt Ellie. The girl blushes at his confession and feels her breath short, but to hide her embarrassment, she accuses Lucas of being rude. Hiding her face in the pillow, she asks the man to talk to her all night. Lucas does not mind, and they begin to share their impressions of the trip together. But still, in the end, Lucas calmly falls asleep in the process of their conversation. Ellie examines the sleeping Lucas and gently touches his face. Then she carefully rolls up to the man's side and hugs him. She feels a little disappointed, but even such a first night in the same bed makes Ellie feel happy. In the morning, they pack their things and go to their final destination, New York. Lucas decided to accompany Ellie to the city and at the same time see many famous places in New York. He is going to return to Seoul from this city as it is faster than via San Francisco. Lucas asks the girl to take care of herself and wishes her good luck in her life and work. Ellie rushes to him and hugs him tightly. She thinks traveling with Lucas was great and asks him to contact her when he gets home. After promising the girl to contact her later, Lucas boards his flight and heads home. Lucas sits on a plane and thinks that the long journey to America has finally come to an end. that when he came to the States, he met a lot of interesting and good people, from startup executives to charming Ellie. He was also very impressed by the industry and culture flourishing in every corner of the country, and of course, the huge capital. When Lucas felt this huge economic flow, greed and a desire to join it awoke in him. He realizes that he wants to make even more money because it's the most fun thing there can be. When he lands in Seoul, he suddenly realizes that a familiar face is greeting him at the airport. Dan arrives at the airport with a nameplate and calls Lucas to his place. The man is surprised that a colleague specially came to meet him. And he's not the only one who came to meet Lucas. With a soft smile, Sue approaches the men, glad that after a while she finally sees Lucas. Lucas is happy to see her, and Dan laughs behind his back at the reaction of his colleagues. Lucas wonders how Sue was able to come during office hours, but Sue replies that she was nearby. The colleagues decide that after Lucas's trip, he will want to have a snack, and the man agrees and takes them to a good restaurant. Lucas's phone at this moment signals incoming messages from Maria, although he does not pay attention to it. After having a good time with Dan and Sue, Lucas finally comes home. He reflects on the fact that American landscapes are good, but nothing compares to his homeland. Before sorting out his luggage, he decides to check the notifications on his phone. He is happy to hear from Charlie, who invites him to come to America more often. He smiles at Ellie's message, in which she talks about a successful interview at a large American company. Ellie writes that they will see each other soon, and Lucas is perplexed about the reasons for a possible meeting. But then he draws attention to the number of messages from his ex-wife Maria. Maria in messages breaks the comedy and presents herself as a gentle, suffering wife. She writes how sad she is that he left for the States without telling her anything. She talks about how much she misses him, and that only after the breakup did she realize the strength of her love for Lucas. Lucas is covered in sweat with horror when he reads these messages. He believes that Maria has gone mad. Subsequent reports contain information about gossip within the company, which refers to Lucas losing money on investments. A woman writes over and over again, and when she doesn't get an answer, she gets irritated. As a result, she only throws insults and threats at him. In recent messages, Maria threatens that Lucas will have a hard time at work. This behavior impresses Lucas, but he immediately blocks all of his ex-wife's phone numbers so that she can no longer bombard him with messages. He once again admits that the divorce from Maria was one of the best events in his life. The next day, he comes to work with full bags of souvenirs for his colleagues and in high spirits. He is alarmed by the fact that the company's employees look extremely sad. He tries to understand what has happened to the atmosphere when several people from his department approach him. They ask Lucas about their vacation experiences and share their own investment success with Lucas' advice. Then Lucas realized that the reason for the decline in mental strength in the team is unsuccessful investments in cryptocurrency and large financial losses. Suddenly, from behind his back, someone mockingly calls for Lucas, who has returned from vacation. Senior colleagues with whom he has a good relationship, namely the manager and the head of the department, come closer to say hello. Lucas is very happy to see them both after so many days of his absence. He takes them to the meeting room to give them the souvenirs he brought, which are expensive watches. Taking the Rolex in their hands, the men look at them in shock, afraid to believe in the reality of what is happening. However, the man confirms that they have a branded thing in their hands. Lucas expresses his gratitude to the men for their help and understanding during the last years of his work. That's why he wanted to make memorable gifts to the manager and the head of the department. However, the manager suddenly frowns, his face darkening and sighs heavily. Lucas is surprised by such a strange reaction to his gift. Men begin to make excuses that they cannot accept such an expensive and special gift. Lucas tries to reason with them, telling them not to worry about the price, because it doesn't matter much to him. The head of the department, sweating, says that someone is chatting around the office that Lucas has lost his assets. Lucas immediately refutes this information, which surprises and pleases men who notice that the rumor has not appeared for the first time. After receiving information about who may be the gossip peddler, Lucas goes to the roof for a break. Almost immediately, Jack, the colleague who let other employees down in the story with cryptocurrency, rises next. Pretending to care about Lucas, Jack tries to find out if he is doing well financially. Lucas smirks contentedly as he begins to drive the man into his trap. In the past, Jack had always bullied him and other employees with less experience, so Lucas had a good chance to get revenge. He decides to confirm the rumors spread by Jack to see where it leads. Jack always looks down on everyone if they are inferior to him in any way, and for the sake of satisfying his pride, he is ready to harm other people. Lucas knew that he would be angry when he found out about his success, but he didn't think it would be so neglected. Jack explains his curiosity by his excitement for Lucas and his future. He puts pressure on the man, offering him to freely talk about his problems. Deciding to play along with him in the name of executing his plan, Lucas decides to give Jack some information. Lucas replies that things are not going well for him and he did not want to tell anyone, but he can trust Jack. Jack immediately beams and begins to convince Lucas that he won't tell anyone. Lucas then gives him information that he has gone broke and has less than 10 million won left in his account. Trying his best not to burst out laughing, Jack feels sorry for Lucas and thanks him for sharing his problems with him. At this point, the trap that Lucas has set closes. And although Jack promised not to tell anyone about Lucas's situation, he immediately goes to the office premises and starts new rumors. Because of his words, colleagues begin to chat about the fact that Lucas sold his assets and came to collapse. It is not easy for Jack to keep his face. He is shaking with delight. Because of the people's disappointment in Lucas, Jack experiences unprecedented joy. He sees Lucas as nothing more than an annoying caterpillar and wants to trample him. Jack needs Lucas to remain a step below him for the rest of his life. Suddenly, the employees' chatter is interrupted by one of their colleagues. He announces that a large corporate dinner party will be held this evening. Jack snorts contemptuously, believing that they will be offered cheap cuisine again, and he is above that. However, in fact, dinner will be at a restaurant famous for Korean beef of the highest quality in all of Gangnam. Of course, such a promise arouses the curiosity of employees. In an expensive restaurant where they come, they are greeted as important people. The company's employees are shocked to doubt that they can and are in a place like this. However, they quickly decide that since they were invited, they need to take advantage of the situation. Usually in such a restaurant, you can only visit a meeting with really rich people, which is why the dishes are more expensive than ordinary employees can afford. Jack thinks about who could be the one who gathered the employees for a company dinner. Suddenly, to his surprise, Lucas enters the restaurant accompanied by the manager and the head of the department. This annoys Jack because he sees it as boasting about his closeness to department heads. However, at the same moment, Lucas takes the microphone and announces to everyone that he organized this event. This will shock all colleagues present except those who were aware of Lucas' plan. Lucas explains that he has no special intentions and this dinner is just a pastime with colleagues. Since he couldn't bring many souvenirs, he decided to order a good dinner for everyone. Lucas's colleagues are shocked by the highest quality meat that the waiters take out. Jack realizes that the 10 million that Lucas should have in his account would not be enough for such a dinner. Everyone around begins to whisper about the rumors that Jack has been spreading. As a result, the idea that Jack was spreading rumors intentionally still sounds at the table. Jack responds by aggressively arguing that Lucas told him about his losses. Suddenly, the head of the department raises his voice and, as if casually, says that Lucas does not make mistakes. These words attract the attention of Jack, who feels ashamed. The head of the department continues that he also lost a lot of money on cryptocurrency, but that's only because he didn't listen to Lucas. But he decided to trust Jack, who was confident in his words. And now he is spreading rumors about Lucas, which are clearly false. It annoys the man. Jack tries to come up with at least something to justify himself, but the words do not come to mind. Lucas leisurely walks over to his desk and calls the man's name. As before, he wouldn't have paid any attention to Jack's gossip. He simply had no choice but to put up with it. But now everything had changed. Grinning contentedly, Lucas says that the evening has been prepared especially for Jack. This, of course, immediately causes Jack to go into a rage when he realizes that he has fallen into a trap. Colleagues begin to discuss that Jack blurted out the secrets that Lucas entrusted to him, and after that he sits quietly here. Jack feels ashamed and angry that he has been trapped and cannot justify himself. Others laugh at his greed because he could not refuse expensive beef, so he came. Jack's eyes darken more and more, but he can't say a word. Lucas and the head of his department exchange signs of their success with smirks. Suddenly, the head of the department is attracted by someone who has come to the restaurant. He shudders in fright and perspires with excitement. Lucas, like all his colleagues, excitedly turn to the door. The guest who came to dinner turns out to be one of the heads of their company. Lucas's colleagues stand up to greet the elder, but he chuckles lightly and asks him to calmly continue his dinner. He stopped by for a moment to see Lucas specifically. Lucas is surprised by this turn of the plot and looks at the boss from under his brow. They sit down at the table and Lucas places the meat on the grill for his boss. The man's colleagues are definitely uncomfortable being at dinner with someone from the boss, but Lucas behaves calmly. Taking a bottle of soju, the boss congratulates Lucas on his investment success. Lucas traditionally puts a glass and gets a drink, after which he thanks the boss. The man laughs that if he knew about Lucas's talents, he would have created an investment department in the company. Although Lucas smiles in the headmaster's face, in his heart he still does not understand the reason for his arrival. Lucas understands that whatever notoriety he has gained through his investments, it is unlikely to attract the attention of the company's top executives. And at this point, the suspicion is confirmed because the director immediately says that Lucas does not understand women, unlike investments. The director considers the breakup with Maria to be Lucas's stupidest mistake, and such a statement makes Lucas clench his teeth. Lucas could not appreciate the rarity of this woman since it was he who proposed a divorce and did not try to understand her. The director mocks that in fact it is Maria who is tired of living with him. However, thanks to Lucas's stupidity, the director was able to become happier. Although Lucas guesses what the reason for his happiness is, he still decides to clarify what he has done for the headmaster. And it turns out that during Lucas's absence, Maria has become close to the director of their company. He came to the restaurant to announce their relationship and convince Lucas to separate personal and work. He tries to praise himself through the humiliation of others, saying that not everyone can be with such a beauty as Maria. But Lucas, interrupting him, loudly and calmly congratulates the man. He takes a bottle of soju and offers to fill the boss with a glass. He says that he is happy for him and Maria as an ex-husband and wishes them long life, but in his thoughts he already condoles with the future life of the chief. When dinner is over, Lucas goes outside to ventilate after an evening filled with alcohol. He does not want to think about Maria, but still remembers that once he was happy with her. They got together and began dating quite quickly after a short flirtation, and after 6 months of dating, they played a traditional wedding. Lucas thinks that he wanted a family so much that he tried to keep Maria's hand in his until the very end. But the reality turned out to be harsh, and after the wedding, a huge difference in his and his wife's characters was revealed. Luke faced constant neglect from his wife's family, and married life turned out to be hell. So in the end, they divorced a year later by mutual consent. And Lucas just wanted to have a good lunch together, to enjoy the good news together. He wanted to feel support from his wife in difficult times. He wanted to be a completely different parent than his father. And now, because of the alcohol, he feels that he has become overly sentimental. Meanwhile, Sue running late through the streets of Seoul to a restaurant for dinner. Each of them is immersed in their own thoughts, and it seems that they are about to meet. But this does not happen. When Sue reaches the restaurant, it turns out that dinner has already ended, and Lucas on his way meets a familiar face framed by blonde hair. Not far from him, Ellie is standing, smiling affably at the man. Lucas brings Ellie home to warm her up because the winters in Korea are colder than she thought. Lucas wonders what brought the American to Korea, but she thinks the answer is obvious. Of course, she had come because she wanted to see Lucas. She was able to get the job she wanted, but she still has about 10 days before it starts, and she decided to spend them in Seoul. She asks to stay with Lucas, who is embarrassed by the fact that he has only one bed at home. But Ellie laughs that they are both used to such conditions. Lucas is embarrassed and excited about their meeting. He didn't expect to see Ellie so soon. The girl shifts awkwardly from foot to foot, afraid of rejection. Sighing, Lucas agrees to keep her with him and offers to take a bath to keep Ellie warm. The girl obeys and goes to the bathroom where she enjoys spending time in the water. At this time, Lucas decides to cook something hot for dinner. He washes and peels vegetables, thinking that he can cook something from Korean home cooking. He hadn't cooked for someone for a long time, but he hadn't lost the memory of how to do it. Lucas decides to cook bulgogi for Ellie, a traditional dish made from slices of meat and vegetables. At one time, Maria despised him for this dish, believing that it was beneath her dignity. And although Lucas was confident in the taste of his cooking, his ex-wife did not care. After sending the food to the stove, Lucas begins to catch not the most pleasant flashbacks. Everything that he cooked for his wife, she disgustingly threw away and poured into the sink. She wanted to eat in rich restaurants, and Lucas couldn't offer it to her, which made him feel hopeless. Now, for the first time in a long time, he sets the table for dinner with a woman. Without letting the man sink deeper into his thoughts, Ellie hurriedly enters the kitchen. Dressed in a bathrobe, she wipes her hair and praises the aroma of the cooked dishes. The girl sits down at the table, assuring that she will gladly eat everything that Lucas has prepared for her. The man gets a little nervous when Ellie carefully tastes the food. She puts a spoon of meat and rice in her mouth and freezes for a moment. Lucas looks at Ellie, barely blinking, trying to read her reaction. But Ellie is delighted. She loudly praises Lucas's culinary talents and even blushes with pleasure. She realized that he served her bulgogi because she tried something similar at a Korean restaurant in the States, but she likes Lucas better. Her reaction, frank and satisfied, makes a man's heart beat faster, and a smile appears on his face. After a hearty dinner, the two of them wash the dishes and clean up the kitchen. After that, they change to bed and go to the bedroom, where they stomp awkwardly by the bed. Finally, they lie face to face, and Ellie, exhausted by the journey, dozes off almost immediately. And Lucas can't fall asleep. He looks at the girl with tenderness and thinks about Ellie's feelings for him. He is afraid to start a difficult relationship, but he cannot help but notice that she is in love with him. His hand involuntarily reaches for her blonde hair. He tucks a strand of hair behind the girl's ear. The fear of letting Ellie come closer is due to the fact that he is afraid that the girl will hurt him if he opens his heart. He thought he was doing well, but the scars from the divorce were deeper than he had imagined. Still, meeting her made him doubt that loneliness was the right way to go. The half-asleep girl moves closer and snuggles up to Lucas. He can't help but gently touch Ellie's forehead with his lips, too absorbed in his thoughts about feelings. At the touch, Ellie almost immediately opens her eyes and they look at each other, embarrassed. Between Ellie and Lucas, everything sparkles with tension. The girl gently touches his chest. Not wanting to push away someone who is looking at him with such warmth, Lucas pulls Ellie closer and presses his lips to hers. He can no longer resist Ellie's charm, and they spend the night together. In the morning, the story takes us to the office and production of the medical company with which Lucas's company cooperates. The director of the company is talking on the phone with partners and is horrified to learn about several broken contracts. It turns out that several contractors have refused to work with this company over the past month. At this time, the phone rings loudly and the CEO grabs the receiver. He is surprised to recognize Lucas's voice on the other end of the line. After a short conversation, they arrange a meeting and Lucas arrives at the office. He had seen the director of this pharmaceutical company when he was still a rookie 3 years ago. The headmaster regrets not taking Lucas for granted as the meeting was scheduled very quickly. Lucas asked not to apologize because it was he who asked for a meeting without prior arrangement. The men wonder who Ellie is, who accompanies Lucas, and Lucas explains that she works alongside him. In the eyes of the employees of a pharmaceutical company, this is a very interesting fact. They wonder what is the reason for Lucas's arrival, and he, a little worried, decides to ask a question. He asked whether the director had any difficulties in managing the company recently. The director confirms this, but notes that Lucas's company still gives them a lot of good orders, and there are many important projects ahead. However, Lucas shares information that another pharmaceutical company is putting pressure on this one. Such awareness of internal corporate issues stunned the men present at the meeting. Lucas goes on to explain that due to the expansion, the company is short of capital, and their competitors are putting pressure on their partners to terminate contracts. Men understand that the ultimate goal of competitors is to take over a weaker company at a lower price. Lucas hastens to reassure the men, saying that he is present at the meeting as a private person and not a representative of his company. He finally declares that he would like to invest his personal funds in the company of the director sitting in front of him. The director of a pharmaceutical company is very surprised that Lucas is engaged in investments. From the very beginning, he was interested in the purpose of his old acquaintance. But despite the fact that he needs money to maintain the company, he refuses Lucas's offer. He is not sure that the company will stay afloat for more than 3 months, and there is a chance that Lucas will not be able to return his investment. He suggests that the thousands or millions that Lucas allocated should be used for another cause. Lucas only sighs heavily in response to his words. Once again, he is underestimated. He pauses for a while, choosing his words, because he wants to hold the intrigue. Men from the company perceive this silence as a negative reaction. But Lucas suddenly asks how much money will help the company get out of the crisis. The director of the company does not expect this. He is still not used to seeing Lucas as more than just a newcomer. Then the man stuns him with the news that he was thinking about billions of dollars in investments. Since Lucas considers the director to be a great businessman and respects his drug company, he wants to support it financially. He invites men to look at the total amount of assets in his account and name any amount they need. Representatives of the company are speechless from shock and can only look at Lucas's phone. They understand the seriousness of Lucas's intentions, who is ready to invest any amount in the company. After this, it is simply impossible to refuse him, and the men prepare the necessary package of documents. Ellie immediately starts researching them, noticing that Lucas has chosen a good investment target. Despite the difficult situation due to construction and loans, the company has high productivity and many customers with long-term contracts. Therefore, when solving the current problems of the company, there is a chance that revenues will grow significantly. The headmaster, listening to the conversation between Ellie and Lucas, which they conducted in English, once again tries to find out what the girl does. Then Lucas already fully represents her as a financial expert working in a large American company. This makes it clear that he was serious from the very beginning. The director finds it hard to believe how the man became such a successful investor in 3 years. They seal the deal and shake hands contentedly. As an additional gift, the director of the company offers him a business card of a representative of a bio company in which it will also be possible to invest. After a business meeting, Lucas and Ellie drive around town in his Ferrari. The girl thanks Lucas for the fact that her first job was an investment estimate of 40 billion won, which is a useful experience. But she immediately begins to laugh at her companion, asking about the payment for her work. Lucas asks what Ellie would like to receive as a reward for her efforts. The girl suddenly smiles insidiously and says that she has an idea. There was something she had long dreamed of doing with Lucas. So very soon Lucas finds himself handcuffed to a chair in some basement. Blush with delight, Ellie suggests that they have a good time together. It turns out that the girl brought Lucas to the quest room, which she had read about on the internet. She tries to find out if he found the game of escaping from prison fun, and Lucas replies that he didn't mind, but he was confused by the handcuffs. Suddenly, Ellie sighs about how she feels sorry to work so far away from Lucas. In another country, she wishes she could see him every day. Beginning to develop feelings for an American woman, Lucas thinks about buying the company she works for the first time. However, he does not currently have the money that is needed to do so. However, setting up a business in Seoul's commercial district can make all the difference. While he is thinking, Ellie's attention is attracted by an institution. This is a center where you can watch a movie for two and which couples use for dates. Although Lucas is not eager to go to such a place, Ellie is very impressed and wants to spend time with a man. When they go inside, she is very excited about her idea. The beauty of the American woman immediately fascinates the employee of the center. But when he sees a girl of this level with an ordinary-looking Korean, his mood changes. He looks at Lucas almost threateningly, despising him for his success. An employee of the center believes that he looks no worse than Lucas, and this situation is unfair. At this time, Lucas and Ellie choose a movie, and the employee automatically assigns them a room, answering in a friendly way. Then he mentally reproaches himself because he doesn't want to be nice to this couple. Ellie wants to watch a movie that interests her as soon as possible, and Lucas supports the girl. An employee of the center comes up with an insidious plan. He decides to wash the floor in front of their room. Then, if he heard obscene noises from the room, he would be able to break in. Thus, he will disrupt Lucas and Ellie's date and get moral satisfaction. But half an hour later, the floor is already polished to a shine as never before, and obscene sounds are still not heard. Only a movie can be heard from the room. The man looks awkwardly at the door, not understanding how Lucas can just watch a movie alone with such a girl. Lucas and Ellie are sitting on a special bed, hugging, but their attention is really carried away by the film. The film is dedicated to the epidemic that took many lives. The film leaves a heavy impression, and Ellie involuntarily asks the question of how they could live during the epidemic. Lucas replies that there will be numerous casualties and the economy will collapse completely. However, according to Lucas, everything in the film is too exaggerated. After all, there are people who do not lose hope in any situation, and they will be able to unite and defeat the disease. The girl looks at her companion with a satisfied smile. She admits, a little embarrassed, that she is impressed by his cool speech. Later in the night, as Lucas and Ellie sleep in his apartment, the man hears Ellie breathing heavily. Turning the girl over on her back, he wakes her up and watches with horror that blood is flowing from her mouth. Then he grabs Ellie, throws her on his back, and hurries outside to catch a car to the hospital. However, as soon as they step outside the apartment complex, Lucas's eyes widen in horror. The streets are mired in devastation, bodies everywhere, burning cars and the sound of sirens. Lucas doesn't understand how the world has changed so much in just a few hours. The dead under their feet are what especially frightens a man. He tries to bring his human burden to his senses. Suddenly, barely breathing, Ellie gives a voice and whispers something. When Lucas listens, Ellie starts screaming that it was all his fault and transforms into a zombie. In a cold sweat, Lucas opens his eyes and is relieved to realize that he was just having a nightmare. He sits up on the bed and looks anxiously at Ellie, who is sleeping next to him. Fortunately, she looks completely healthy. She dreams peacefully. Jumping out of bed, Lucas goes to his desk and pulls out a business card he received recently. He recalls how the director of a pharmaceutical company said that he himself had invested money in it before. The bio company he told Lucas about is conducting research to analyze flu strains and create more effective vaccines using artificial intelligence. Feeling the need to do a good deed after a disturbing dream, Lucas calls the number on his business card. A few hours later, he takes Ellie to the airport, who says goodbye with a slight sadness. Lucas gently hugs the girl and promises to contact her when he is in the States. He is sad to see off Ellie, who caused such a hurricane of feelings in him. But suddenly, he feels his phone vibrating in his trouser pocket. He picks up the phone and is surprised to find his friend Charlie on the other end of the line. Charlie laughs at the fact that Lucas was so scared of a nightmare that he immediately decided to invest in medicine. Lucas is embarrassed by this reaction, so he replies that he has only scheduled a meeting on the issue of such investments. Charlie believes that it will not be easy to succeed in developing a vaccine using artificial intelligence. Lucas listens carefully to his friend's words that the development of artificial intelligence can increase the success of the project. However, even if a drug is created, it will be able to enter the market full of competitors only in 8 to 15 years. Therefore, the profitability is too low compared to the required investment. Lucas reflects on the fact that it may not really make sense to invest in an area that has no potential. However, the dream and the threat that was in it alarmed the man too much. Charlie believes that Lucas is better off listening to the opinion of experts. He decides to introduce his friend to someone who is directly related to medical research. To Lucas's surprise, the expert, with whom he speaks via video call, answers a call from the gym during exercise. Paul is a professor of infectious diseases at the American University Hospital. Lucas is a little embarrassed by such an interesting person, but he is also happy to meet him. Paul decides to find out why Lucas needed his advice. The Korean replies that he is interested in the development of vaccines using artificial intelligence. Paul notes that this is a very interesting and relevant question for scientists. In fact, artificial intelligence is already being used in medicine in drug development and genetic analysis. Performance is still insufficient, but large companies are interested in the early success of this technology. Lucas is surprised that artificial intelligence is already being used, and there are strong competitors in the market. The situation turns out to be more complicated than Lucas imagined. Paul, after listening to Lucas's story, suddenly remembers a friend. He also believes that it is necessary to use artificial intelligence to develop vaccines, and he is also Korean, and by combining these two thoughts, Lucas forms a conclusion. He asks if it's the doctor he's already contacted, Paul says. And it turns out that Paul told him about the research company where this doctor works. Lucas is surprised by this coincidence because he learns that Paul and a doctor named Henry were friends when they studied together. And Paul considers Henry a real genius who can change the world. For such a genius, it would have been more profitable to get support and conduct research in the States, but he went back to Korea. It turns out that in the past, he hit a professor who spoke disparagingly about the purpose of Henry's research. After that, he left the university, saying that it would be better to conduct research alone. Lucas is frightened because he immediately imagines that he will have a hard time. As soon as Henry finds out that he has changed his mind about investing, he will immediately hit Lucas himself. Paul is eager to join Lucas and Henry's meeting, so he immediately volunteers to come to Seoul. And the very next day, they meet at the research center where Dr. Henry works. The American is taller than Lucas and wider in the shoulders, but he is a rather pleasant person. But the CEO of the bio company in which Lucas wants to invest looks very weak and tormented. Paul and Henry happily greet each other after a long separation. Lucas breathes a sigh of relief because Henry does not look threatening. But just as Lucas decides to discuss the investment with him, the doctor begins to cough up blood. As a result, her spray covers the men standing in front of him. Paul sympathetically holds his coughing friend, stroking his back. Lucas looks at the painting with an awkward smile and still thinks maybe he should invest in something else. After getting drunk on energy drinks and coming to his senses, Henry introduces himself to Lucas once again and apologizes for the inconvenience. Paul laughs at him, saying that the reason for his troubles is the lack of training. Lucas decides to find out if everything is okay with the doctor's health. It turns out that he just did not sleep for 5 days to prepare for the meeting. Lucas offers to reschedule the appointment for another day so that the doctor can rest, but the doctor abruptly grips the jar in his hand. The spray covers Lucas' face, and Lucas tries to keep a polite smile on his lips. Henry immediately turns gloomy and says that there should be no postponements. Even at this point, valuable time is running out, as it is impossible to predict where and when the virus will break out. He screams that it will be too late and coughs once again, spraying everyone with his blood. Lucas could get used to it by now. He and Paul don't even raise an eyebrow. Henry grabs the remote control to show the guests a presentation about the importance of his project. He wipes the blood from his face and tries to gather all his strength. The flu, according to the doctor, looks like the same virus as a cold, but there are still significant differences between them. The common cold is caused by several viruses and has mild symptoms, while the flu is caused by a single flu virus and kills up to 1 million people each year. Lucas is stunned by such statistics. He did not think that the consequences of the flu could be so serious. Influenza is constantly mutating. There have already been strains of bird, swine, Spanish flu in history. The latter at one time claimed the lives of 40 million people. And since now the density of the population of cities is much higher, the danger is greater. Now an outbreak of such a flu could turn into an unprecedented pandemic. Dr. Henry is doing his best to prevent such a development of events. Modern flu vaccines will be useless. If the flu mutates, something new will need to be created. Therefore, Henry's company's research is aimed at reducing the speed of the new strain and creating a vaccine using artificial intelligence. The doctor gives Lucas and Paul papers with the results of his research. Professor Paul reads the documents especially actively, but never for a second does he stop exercising. The man is delighted that Henry continued to work on his project even after leaving the States. Henry says that in Korea he does not have the largest financial support, but it is enough to continue research. The floor is so excited with delight that its clothes are torn apart with enthusiasm. Lucas seems tired of wondering about anything to do with these two men. Paul exclaims that Henry did great research despite the lack of support and would love to invest in it. He rushes to his university friend and hugs him with all his might, causing Henry to wheeze. Lucas immediately takes the professor's words personally. He wants to know if this project has a great chance of success. In response, the professor laughs loudly and shakes his head negatively. Such a reaction is shocking, both Lucas and Dr. Henry. Paul then clarifies that this research seems like a worthwhile project for him as a scientist, but it is difficult to talk about third-party investors and their possible profits. Still, it is impossible to predict how long it will take to develop, and it is also important to remember that the value of the research will depend on the new mutated virus. Of course, it will be possible to earn a lot of money later, but so far, 2 risky investments of a huge amount of money and time are required. Thus, Lucas is faced with a very difficult choice. If you just look at the potential profit, then it would be wiser for him not to invest. But Lucas wants to help the development of medicine. Seeing that the potential investor is immersed in thought, Henry decides to come up with a risky idea. If he does not achieve any significant results within 5 years, he will hand over all the results of his research to Lucas and resign. Both Paul and Lucas are shocked that Henry is willing to do this. However, the doctor thus shows his determination. Also, if his company doesn't succeed in 5 years, then all the research will lose its value. He is so determined that he is ready to burn everything he has in an attempt to achieve his goal. Lucas is interested in the investments the company needs, and it turns out that it needs about $2 billion annually, but the more the better. Lucas, after listening to him, declares that since the doctor is so serious, he is ready to provide him with reliable support. He calls his price at $10 billion a year. That is, in total, he is ready to provide an investment of $50 billion. Lucas is still not sure if he is doing the right thing, but Henry's passion for his work is worth it. So he comes closer to the doctor and holds out his hand for a handshake, wishing him further success. Relieved, Henry bleeds out of his mouth again and promises to do his best. And then he faints, and once again covered in blood, Lucas only sighs. but he is very interested to know what will happen over the next 5 years and what will happen to his investment. Meanwhile, at the company building where Lucas works, Sue is in a hurry to start the working day. She walks into her office and greets her colleagues in a friendly way. One of the coworkers greets back and Sue asks him if Lucas has arrived. Looking around, the guy is confused that he was here only recently. Assuming that Lucas might have gone to the roof, Sue decides to go after him. She is very glad that she will be able to see her older colleague and therefore hurries up the stairs to the roof. She notices through the half-open door that Lucas is talking to his manager. But as she grabs the doorknob to come over, Sue hears snatches of conversation. She does not want to believe in what she has heard and freezes, afraid to breathe. Lucas hands the manager another application, and this time it is definitely for dismissal. The girl freezes in the corridor. She simultaneously wants to intervene and is afraid to approach. Like all people, Lucas dreamed of being an unemployed person with a huge amount of money. People have completely different dreams, but he considers this one to be the most sincere. He will no longer have to go through hell in transport. He will no longer have to suffer because of overtime. You don't have to please an unpleasant boss, because that's the way it is. Lucas now has complete economic freedom, and even if he doesn't work, the money works for him. Lucas is finally ready to become unemployed with a huge amount of money. On Lucas's last day on the job, his manager says that he has always been a diligent worker. He hopes that the man will be able to succeed outside the company. Lucas sincerely thanks his colleagues for the time spent in the company, which gave him a lot. When asked about his future plans, he decides to tell us that he is thinking of just continuing the path of investing. The manager shakes Lucas's hand and tells him to invite him for a drink if he is around. He also whispers to congratulate Lucas on becoming a controlling stake in a pharmaceutical company. Although Lucas did not hide it much, he was nevertheless surprised that the manager knew about it. A young colleague sees off his friend in tears because he is very sad to say goodbye. He pounces on Lucas with a hug, and he is uncomfortable with such a display of emotions. However, he immediately whispers to Lucas to give him a hint next time about what to invest in. The guy wants to follow Lucas's path, make a fortune, and quit. A manager who hears this immediately begins to tease the employee. He notes that there is nothing wrong with wanting to get rich. Therefore, if he wants, he can immediately write a letter of resignation, and the manager will sign it. In tears, the guy takes back his words and whines that he will work harder. The manager asks Lucas if he's going to go into other departments as well, and Lucas has a great plan for that. He has someone to say goodbye to, so he goes up to the department where Maria works. The woman immediately begins to mock the fact that her ex-husband decided to resign. She wishes a man a happy, modest life because a poor man once remains poor inside forever. Lucas is surprised by this statement and asks Maria to clarify her words. She replies that even though Lucas managed to get rich thanks to cryptocurrency, his essence as a beggar will not change. Once she had already noticed this and was disappointed in him, so Maria wonders when this trait will be noticed by others. She is furious that Lucas does not react to the jokes. He smiles absolutely calmly and does not look crushed at all. This makes Maria frown even more. She wants to see Lucas only as a pathetic insect. But the man declares that he really got rich thanks to luck, bought an apartment, a car, and is very happy. And all this luck came to him only thanks to the fact that they divorced in time. A woman in a rage cannot believe that her once downtrodden husband spoke out in such a way. But Lucas calmly turns his back on her and leaves, adding that he marked her numbers as spam so that she could never contact him again. He does not pay attention to the screams and curses of his ex, but the fact that he did not say goodbye to Sue Lucas is upsetting. Lucas is not blind and has long guessed about the girl's feelings. He is grateful to her for finding something in him, even when he was a poor man with low self-esteem. But now that he has Ellie, Lucas can't accept Sue's feelings, so he wanted to say goodbye to her carefully. But maybe it will be better if she just forgets him over time. Meanwhile, Sue is hiding from Lucas in the same office, afraid of being caught by the man. Dan approaches Sue and tells her that she can still confess to Lucas. He assures that the girl will not be able to achieve more if she is afraid to even come up to say hello. However, Sue, feeling her heart break, says that if Lucas is happy, she will be happy too. At this time, Lucas takes the elevator down, scrolling through a lot of thoughts in his head. So much has happened to him lately that it is impossible to remember everything. Despite the fact that his father had exploited him all his life, it was he who miraculously gave Lucas the first $25 billion. Lucas believed that after the divorce he would not be able to start a relationship at all. but Ellie and other people showed sympathy to him appeared in his life. And although the man is a little sorry to leave the company where he liked to work, a great future awaited him. Lucas takes a step towards this future and leaves the company where he has worked for the past 3 years. He is inspired and very much looking forward to new adventures. And soon, unfortunately, life all over the world faces a great tragedy. Field hospitals are being organized everywhere. The world is gripped by a global pandemic of a new virus unknown to science. After a while, we find ourselves on the investment bulletin board again. Participants in investment chats are actively discussing where to invest money, in cryptocurrency, stocks, or real estate. However, here appears a participant who used to actively promote his goes under the nickname 10 million won. It turns out to be Jack, who bullied Lucas at work. Now the man is his devoted fan and has repented of everything. The chat participants agree that Lucas' life should now be just fabulous. And they are not far from the truth. He has moved to a new house, even more luxurious than the previous one. So much so that Lucas has a security staff of many armed men and a personal swimming pool. And the popularity of the man was the reason that a journalist came to visit him for an interview. After receiving praise for his new home, Lucas replies contentedly that he purchased it for those occasions when he is staying in Korea. This perfectly emphasizes that Lucas is one of the 10 richest people in Korea. And this is despite the fact that he is only 32 years old, which is quite a small age for all his merits. The man confidently holds himself in front of the camera, dressed in an expensive suit, and smiles softly. He has already settled in a luxurious environment. He is used to expensive cars and travel. Now, being on the covers of magazines does not surprise him much, but he still wants to show off the magazine in front of Ellie. Lucas writes her messages that he will soon come to the States and wants to see her. However, the man does not receive an answer, and this makes him worry. This causes Alice, the new secretary and security guard, to call him by name several times to get attention. Lucas apologizes for the lack of attention and this time seriously listens to her report on the growth of assets and profits. All this leads to the fact that Lucas will soon become one of the richest people in the world. Lucas feels satiated and uninspired. He wants something new and breakthrough. Just in time, Alice informs him that there is a message from Dr. Henry. In it, the man reports that there are signs of an impending pandemic of a dangerous virus. Despite the fact that the place of origin is difficult to determine, the infection has spread to many countries. Lucas regrets that an epidemic could happen, even though he has invested in healthcare. Therefore, the man decides to help solve Henry's problems and build additional housing for his employees. Although they rented a large bus to transport laboratory staff, Lucas believes that such measures are not enough. Therefore, he proposes to act more radically and improve their lives, since they have opportunities. Still, these are people who work even at night, and it is inconvenient for them to live away from the laboratory. So Lucas decides that it would be in his best interest to build a new building. To implement his idea, he turns to an old acquaintance, Chloe, whom he met on the plane. For a business meeting, they go to a classic soul bar. The girl sulks at Lucas because he asked for a meeting for work. He wants one of her company's divisions to help carry out the construction work, while Chloe herself hoped that the man she met 2 years ago asked her out on a date. Lucas says that he could not contact the girl because he was busy investing or traveling all the time. Chloe is surprised that Lucas has a personal bodyguard, a large black man. Lucas explains that he hired him while traveling so that he would not be stabbed for 100 euros. The girl sighs, but agrees to do the construction, but she has conditions, and one of them is shares in Chris's company, which Lucas bought. Still, Chloe's car company has a strong interest in autonomous driving. Lucas agrees to these conditions quite calmly, not seeing too much damage to himself. But Chloe's second condition evokes much more emotions in him. The embarrassed girl hides her face, as if afraid to say what is on her mind. But when she makes up her mind, she says that she wants to get drunk with Lucas. At this time, an important conversation takes place in the company owned by her father. The chairman's secretary informs him that Chloe, despite the late evening, has not yet returned home. Chloe's father is not surprised by her absence because he is a workaholic himself. However, the secretary reports that the girl is on a date with a man. This infuriates Chloe's father because he can't imagine what kind of man would be worthy of his daughter. But his daughter spends time very actively and drinks bottle after bottle with Lucas. She persuades Lucas to drink more, but the man knows how to stop in time. Lucas looks at this behavior, sweating nervously. He did not expect this from a rich heiress. He hands Chloe over to her staff, who promise to take Chloe home. At this time, he himself gets into his car and leaves the meeting place. Chloe confidently states that there is no man who would not fall in love with her. In the company's office, the girl is impatiently awaited by her father. A negative aura thickens around the man. Chloe asks her father not to make a mountain out of a molehill, convincing him that the meeting was a business meeting. First of all, Chloe wanted to buy out the shares of one of Lucas's American companies. Her father is pleased that Chloe saw business rather than romance in the meeting. However, she openly admits that she has been in love with Lucas for a long time, which shocks the chairman. Chloe doesn't care that Lucas is divorced, as she doesn't see anything special in couples dating and breaking up. And she does not intend to listen to any dissatisfaction of her father about the candidacy of her beloved. Her father whines that he introduced Chloe to good boys, but she rejected them all, and Chloe replies that they were useless heirs to the conglomerates. Chloe prefers to listen to her intuition, and she tells her that Lucas is a special person. She is sure that Lucas will be able to bring a real wind of change. The next day, Lucas goes to the bio company and meets Paul, who throws himself at him with a hug. Suddenly, Professor Paul is confronted with the sharp gaze of Lucas's guard. Lucas's guard gets an equally appraising look at Professor Paul. As a result, a spark slips between the pumped-up men, and they begin to measure their muscles and agree to go to the gym together. Hung with the remnants of the clothes that the men tore off while showing off, Lucas sighs softly. Lucas asks the professor about Dr. Henry's health and learns that he worked all night and passed out. The current situation with the pandemic turns out to be, according to the professor, very bad. In just a month after the outbreak, the virus spread to the United States, Europe, China, Japan, and the number of new infected exceeded 25,000 per day. The number of deaths is huge. Paul asked Lucas to increase the computer power to run artificial intelligence. Such an increase in capacity can help to quickly find a solution to the problem with both the virus and the necessary vaccine. At home, Lucas ponders the results of his visit to the bio company and his possible steps. He sighs heavily, trying to figure out how to increase the power for artificial intelligence to work. One of Lucas' ideas is to build a building to house a computer center, and he is also thinking about using foreign cloud services. But he is not sure of the success of these ideas, so he decides to distract himself with computer games. Realizing how much dust has accumulated on his computer during his time of non-use, he comes up with a new plan. In order to understand whether it will work, Lucas needs to hear his friend's opinion. He jumps up from his seat with impatience, because it is impossible to sit still. If his idea works, it will allow not only to achieve huge computer performance, but also to start a new business. At this time, the phone on the bedside table of the guard, Lucas, begins to vibrate. The man wakes up and hurriedly answers a call from his boss, who asks him to prepare an urgent trip to the States. In San Francisco at this time, there is a fierce shootout. Of course, not in real life, but in the next game that Charlie is going through. Suddenly, a large black man appears in front of Charlie's face. Lucas's security guard scares his friend, and Charlie jumps up and threatens to call the police. And then he realizes that he is surrounded by a large number of strangers. Suddenly, a familiar voice reaches Charlie from behind the men. Lucas apologizes to his friend for the intrusion, as they called and knocked, but Charlie did not hear, and they had to enter. When the misunderstanding is resolved, Charlie admires Lucas's personal bodyguards. But not wanting to drag it out for long, Lucas decides to ask a friend how he feels about cartoons about superheroes, because Lucas has a desire to save the world together and become a kind of heroes. Right now, the world is in great danger, and men have a plan to save it. Charlie does not understand what the coin that his friend is twisting in his fingers has to do with it. Lucas proposes to create his own cryptocurrency to solve urgent problems. He laughs when a friend offers him treatment for his digital addiction. After all, in fact, his idea has great potential for implementation. Lucas explains to Charlie, who does not understand logic, what his plan is. The creation of a cryptocurrency is necessary for the development of a vaccine, as the performance of artificial intelligence is insufficient. With the help of blockchain technology, the system resources of computers that have applied for mining will be used, and in return, people will receive a new cryptocurrency. The use of unspent capacity by artificial intelligence can be a great help in the development of a vaccine against a new virus. Lucas also guarantees a minimum exchange price for coins, which will allow people to compensate for their electricity bill and earn a little money. Charlie doubts that such an idea can be profitable, but it can definitely save the world. He is very impressed with Lucas's plan and wants to have fun taking part in it. Lucas also plans to try his hand at the entertainment content niche. He is thinking about shooting a movie or a drama with their favorite actors. Charlie is delighted and asks to entrust him with the work because he will not let you down and will complete all the tasks assigned to him. They decide to first assemble a team that will help them in the implementation of the cryptocurrency project. As they plan to pay them the best salary in the industry, Lucas asks a friend to choose people more carefully. However, Charlie teaches him that real heroes are not driven by money. They act at the call of the heart. He posts an announcement about the creation of a team on a forum where the strongest representatives of the computer industry gather and offer the fulfillment of any desires in terms of merch. Responses begin to pour in at lightning speed, and Lucas is shocked at how interested everyone is in his project. Charlie laughs that it's the power of otaku, and he's not surprised that the people in the project are interested. After a while, Lucas and Charlie open an office that can be staffed by the IT specialists they have hired. Lucas meets a new employee at the entrance who looks at him with interest and introduces herself to her. The girl is awkwardly silent, actively examining and inflating a bubble of gum. And then he writes in a general chat with colleagues that their boss is handsome and you need to be careful. Such behavior embarrasses Lucas, but he is not annoyed because he begins to get used to the manners of such extraordinary personalities. He decides for himself that all programmers have their quirks, but that's not a bad thing at all. Despite the fact that he and Charlie have prepared the latest computers and offices, no one uses them. Everyone sits where they are comfortable with their laptops. Lucas approaches Charlie to get an interim report. Things are going great, and Charlie devotes a lot of time to their project, taking a break from his work. But there is one person that Charlie wants to introduce to his friend. This brilliant programmer's name is Eddie. He sits separately from everyone else. He doesn't make mistakes when writing code and always puts his heart and soul into his work. Therefore, Charlie confidently considers it the heart of their entire project. And he would like Lucas and Eddie to find a common language. But Charlie is also curious about what name Lucas came up with for their new coin. Lucas calls their creation the original coin, which surprises his friend. But in the understanding of a man, the original coin is a coin that can become the source of anything. While Lucas was developing his cryptocurrency in the States, the situation was tense in his previous company. During breaks, the employees actively discussed the appointment of Maria Ajrayam, Lucas's ex-wife, as the head of the department, bypassing the candidate everyone likes. This is definitely personnel corruption, as Maria is in a relationship with the senior boss she chose to infringe on Lucas. Maria's subordinates doubt that she will make a good head of the department, since her experience and skills are insufficient. Maria witnesses their conversation and harshly scolds the girls for gossip during the working day. In her opinion, if one of them is not satisfied with working under her leadership, they can submit a letter of resignation or go after the previous head of the department to a city far from Seoul. The girls hurriedly apologize to Maria and hurry to leave the restroom. Lucas's ex-wife repeats her new position out loud. She is pleased with the power it gives her. Then the woman's attention is attracted by a magazine with Lucas on the cover, lying on the table. She angrily grabs it and throws it in the nearest trash can. As she walks down the hallway of the company, she reflects on the opportunity she lost when she lost Lucas. Now her new admirer has an annual salary of about 100 million won, and his parents have a nice house. And since he is a millionaire, a bright streak is simply bound to begin in her life. Once again cursing her ex-husband, she swears that she will live a happier life than him. Her swearing mentioning Lucas's name attracts the attention of a girl passing by. It turns out to be Sue, who has changed her appearance, but has not forgotten her lover. At this time in the office of Lucas's American company, employees are working very actively. A film crew from the entertainment company that the man created watches Lucas play. They film a story about their creator, but Lucas loses time after time. However, the film crew believes that this makes Lucas more human. Lucas sweats awkwardly from such close attention captured on film. He doesn't understand how he signed up to shoot this video, which has been going on for several days. The entertainment company he created has not yet made much profit. The appointed director complains that they have no content at all. Although Lucas gathered outstanding talents, created good conditions, and allocated huge funds. However, so far no interesting ideas and good results. Employees are trying to reason with him, noting that the worsening problem with the coronavirus makes filming difficult. But the director does not want to hear reasonable arguments. He wants to do something cool. Then one of the agency's employees, the youngest, takes the floor. She is cynical, jokes about the boss in response to his nitpicking, and she also has a good idea. This girl is a screenwriter, and she offers to make a documentary about Lucas. She is sure that such content can be popular with viewers. Their company does not have a flagship product yet. Its CEO is already quite popular. His story is full of provocative material from divorce to sudden wealth. Therefore, the company decides to use its own director in the person of Lucas to promote the company. And now they break into the private life of a man, including filming him not from the strongest side. The CEO periodically runs away from excessive attention. However, Lucas started this business himself, so he understands the possible benefits. Lucas is pleased with the way the company is developing. Even the number of employees has more than doubled. The Seed Coin project is also developing steadily, and this affects the psychological climate of the company. But Lucas still can't get along with the brilliant programmer Eddie. He once again approaches him to express his joy that the guy is actively using the game room. However, Eddie immediately sets strict boundaries and asks not to distract himself during his vacation, and says that he came at the call of Charlie and Lucas. He does not obey at all. Eddie's armor is thicker than Lucas thought, but he still wants to follow Charlie's advice and make friends with this strange guy. Lucas apologizes for bothering him and places a folded piece of paper in front of Eddie. Mistaking her for a check in Lucas's gesture for an attempt to bribe, Eddie is furious. He swears that Lucas is trying to buy his favor with money and threatens that he wants to leave. With contempt, he spits out that talk about saving the world is a lie and it all comes down to money again. Lucas grins broadly at this, not understanding what the money has to do with it. There is something much more valuable in the folded paper, and he invites Eddie to see for himself. In the envelope, there is a photo of a very beautiful idol girl. This completely solves Eddie's gift of speech and breathing. He freezes in place. Jennifer is Eddie's favorite performer, and from such a gift, the guy clutches his heart and falls to his knees, which scares Lucas. Eddie doesn't understand how Lucas managed to get hold of such an incredibly rare autographed card. But Lucas has a small media company in Seoul that has helped him do just that. Feeling empowered, Lucas replies that since Eddie likes this performer so much, he can give him tickets to her concert if he can get hold of it by chance. He leans over to Eddie, holding out his hand so he can stand up. And after this proposal, Lucas becomes almost a saint in the eyes of the programmer. Thus, Eddie's onboarding to a permanent job was completed successfully. Yet Charlie's advice, which was to use otaku favorites to seduce them, turned out to be correct. But before Lucas has time to come to his senses, his phone begins to ring from the ring. Dr. Henry calls, who reports on the results of the tests. Lucas wants to know what the current situation is with the coronavirus. Unfortunately, Dr. Lucas cannot please with good news. Health services in all countries are under tremendous strain, and the number of confirmed cases is rising uncontrollably. If the rate of infection does not decrease, then the incidence of 70% of the world's population is predicted. Lucas understands that this marks the beginning of the pandemic. Due to him being in thought, Dr. Henry calls out to him by his first name, drawing his attention. Lucas asks Henry to continue his work, and in return, he will help increase the power of artificial intelligence as soon as he completes the development of the cryptocurrency. After the conversation, Lucas thinks about what will happen to the economy from the pandemic, that the stock and bond markets will collapse. His assets may become worthless. But for some reason, Lucas is sure that in this situation, he can earn much more. But you need to understand how to make money when the economy is collapsing. For such a case, there is a special financial instrument, a put option. It allows you to earn money when the market price falls. But if someone benefits from the system, then someone loses everything. Thus, put options can be used to make money even when the economy is destroyed. Lucas is embarrassed to make money during a pandemic when people are suffering. But still, he reassures himself in time that he is an investor and must first of all think about profit. After all, if he did not have the money that he has now, he would not be able to save the world. At this time in the States, a senator running for president assures that America will save the world from the coronavirus. News of this is broadcast in Ellie's office, who finally calls Lucas. She is shocked and furious that he wants to invest a huge amount of money in a risky put option and has bet on the collapse of the New York stock market. Lucas laughs at the way his girlfriend and financial advisors swear at him. Ellie wants to stop him, asks how much time she has to intervene. But it turns out that there is time left until the end of the week, and she is unlikely to be able to help. This makes the girl even more enraged, and she literally yells at Lucas. In her opinion, no normal investor would risk losing $200 billion like that. However, Lucas is so monstrously calm, as if he knows the future in advance. He only laughs at how emotional his girlfriend is and can't do anything about it. After all, he missed Ellie and her voice, so he listened to her with pleasure. Embarrassed by such a sudden confession, the girl immediately loses her furious mood. It only grumbles that Lucas has become more violent since taking the CEO's chair. She understands that her boyfriend is very rich, but such an investment is difficult for her to understand. But Lucas is also not 100% sure. He just hopes that the forecast may be correct. He also wishes Ellie good luck in adapting to a new place, so that she does not give up and believes more in herself and her potential. Touched by his words, the American woman wants to say something tender in response, but she is interrupted. Her colleague flies into the office and warns that the break is over. Lucas and Ellie hurriedly say goodbye to the man's displeasure. He thinks about what he would like to do in his unexpectedly free time. Its employees both relax and work. The same film crew frolics in the pool. The guys are delighted with such a spacious and comfortable house for employees, moreover, in the States. The screenwriter working with them reminds them that they came for filming. Men realize that they have relaxed too much, enjoying the power of capital. However, they all admit that Lucas's life is too boring to film. People would like to see more shocking details about the life of one of the richest men in the world. Therefore, the screenwriter comes up with the idea of conducting an interview and asking the CEO about investments, as many will be curious about how Lucas has raised his capital and where he is investing now. The film crew immediately accepts this idea and begins to think about its implementation. Lucas agrees to take part in the interview and meets with the team, but he is surprised that the subject of their meeting is where he invests. However, he immediately reveals that he recently made an investment, and the tone of his voice inspires a sensationalist producer. Lucas reveals that he invested 200 billion won in a put option, which is considered a very risky investment. While everyone is in shock, he reassures the team, saying that his expectations can be met. And almost immediately, Lucas receives information about the results of his investment. The producer believes that he hit Lucas hard, since options are very risky and the chances of making a profit are low. The 200 billion invested by Lucas may be perceived negatively by the audience as a bet in a game of chance, and therefore he is thinking of abandoning filming. But Lucas immediately voices the information he received about the option. His profit was 487%, so he earned a little more than 1 trillion Korean won. Shocked, the team is speechless, but Charlie enters the hall and asks Lucas to give him time. The man apologizes and leaves, but the team still does not believe what they have heard. Charlie pleases Lucas with the news that the seed coin is finally ready. And all this is thanks to the excellent team that the men managed to assemble. Dr. Henry is at this moment in the world of his dreams. In the dream, he hears Paul's loud laughter and sees another training session that Paul is leading. All participants in the dream take a muscular posture, boasting about their physical shape. Such a sight shocks poor Dr. Henry even in his dreams. Finally, Paul pays attention to him and calls him to train. At the same time, the doctor's gown is changed to a sports uniform. From such a nightmare, Henry, in a cold sweat, opens his eyes in reality, lying on the couch. Paul stands over him, chuckling, and greets his friend. He actively welcomes Dr. Henry, this time to his house. It turns out that Henry lost consciousness again during the experiment, so Paul took the man to his room and put him to rest. Henry sent the clothes to the wash and changed the man's clothes into his own. Nevertheless, the doctor is only interested in how his experiment went. Unfortunately, Paul has nothing to please his student friend. Thanks to the use of the cloud service, 35% of the work the work was done, but further calculations were impossible due to insufficient performance. Paul asks his disheartened friend to rest while he can. Henry tries to get out of his bunk, believing that this is not the time to rest as the virus continues to spread. However, Paul immediately stops him and tells him to stay at rest. Despite his great passion, in his exhausted state, Henry is unable to conduct research. If he decides to go, Paul warns him that there is nothing he can do as a doctor, and this forces Henry to obey him and lie back down. Henry remembers that it's been 7 years since Paul dragged him out of a fight with the professor. Paul is surprised at how much time has passed since that fight, but does not condemn his friend's actions. He winks at August, noting that he never liked the professor either. Dr. Henry laughs loudly and loudly at his friend's reaction. Paul decides to find out what caused Henry to choose his path in life. Henry does not know how to approach a complex and tragic story, but he explains that it's all about the disease that his younger sister had. It was an infectious disease that had eaten her body long before Henry could have helped her. Paul condoles to his friend, who takes out a locket hanging around his neck. Looking at the photo in it, Henry remembers what a cheerful and talented girl his sister was, never sick before. And after her death, Henry decided that he would definitely eradicate the disease that took his sister from him. He would not allow anyone else to get sick and die like her. Paul wonders what the name of such a dear person to his friend was. However, he does not have time to answer this question, as his employee bursts into Paul's room. The man shouts that there are problems with artificial intelligence. This news shocks Henry and makes him freeze in place. Tearing out the IV and grabbing a doctor's gown, he rushes into the laboratory with Paul. Here, their attention is attracted by a large screen with various indicators. It shows that artificial intelligence is working and actively investigating the virus. No one understands why computing performance has skyrocketed, but then Henry's phone rings. He picks up the phone and Lucas on the other end asks if the doctor is in the lab. It turns out that it was thanks to Lucas's company that the lab was finally lucky to move forward. The SourceCoin project was successful, which delighted the employees. Lucas explains to Henry that he is using blockchain technology so that the bio company can add performance to itself from other computers connected to the system. About an hour ago, the first mining of the new cryptocurrency began, and the number of miners is growing so fast that they are predicted to spread to 500,000 computers within a day. Lucas notes that the value of artificial intelligence itself is enormous, and without the doctor's research, everything would be useless. He thanks Henry for his hard work and wishes to work together to crush the coronavirus with capital and technology. At this moment, Dr. Henry chokes on tears and does not know what to answer except endless words of gratitude. Lucas promises to call him back and smiles contentedly. He is glad that everything worked out. At this time, Paul comes closer to a crying Henry and asks what name he has chosen for the artificial intelligence. This name becomes Soren, the name of the doctor's deceased younger sister. Everyone in the lab is thrilled that a big breakthrough has finally occurred. In Lucas's office, everyone is happy that the SourceCoin project has been launched. Lucas has thrown a party and is trying to give a speech of appreciation, but the programmers prefer to celebrate with each other rather than their superiors. Lucas wishes his employees to enjoy the day to the fullest. Charlie calms him down, telling him not to worry and let the guys focus on the party. Lucas only hopes that everyone on their team is really happy about the success. Charlie reminds them that they will now have to pay for the issuance of the seed coin for a huge number of people. And this is a lot of money. More than 200 million can come out per month. Therefore, he worries whether Lucas is ready with such financial costs. He is surprised when a friend reassures him, as if such money is nothing to him. But this is what Lucas was counting on when he conceived the project. And for him, it is more important that the official creation of the vaccine has begun. Now he can spend money usefully, and this makes Lucas happier. Charlie stares at his friend from his student days for a long time. He sighs softly, noting that Lucas has indeed matured. But still, Charlie is curious to know what the CEO's plans are for the future. The team understands that project work involves a short duration, and therefore the guys discuss the options among themselves. It would be a shame for them to finish when they have found like-minded people and an understanding boss. Therefore, Charlie suggests that Lucas think again about what his plans are for the future. Such a sharp question, asked to all employees, at first puts the man in a stupor. At this stage, he cannot yet say for sure what he would like to achieve. But now he has a team whose job it is to make his ideas possible. Therefore, gathering his courage, Lucas replies that he wants to create the right cryptocurrency ecosystem. Now, there are many negative images associated with coins, such as speculation and fraud, and he wants to improve their reputation. By guaranteeing the minimum value of the original coin, Lucas wants to ensure that it can be used in various fields and make it valuable as a true virtual currency. Lucas thinks that the idea he said aloud for the first time really excites him. The team is silent as they listen to him, and Lucas is embarrassed by their lack of reaction. He immediately begins to think that he said some stupid thing and he will not be supported. Even Eddie and the programmer girl who likes him are watching him closely. Lucas begins to wind himself up more and more and is covered in a nervous sweat. It seems to him that he is a disgrace, a humanitarian who has declared to people much smarter than himself about something fantastic and unattainable. However, Lucas is suddenly surrounded by the sounds of increasing applause. All the guys from his team look at him with respect and applaud his words loudly. This reaction, the opposite of what was expected, shocks Lucas. Eddie, barely holding back tears, admires the height of their boss's plan. Everyone sees the value of his dreams and the fun in his future work for Lucas's company. The programmers are so moved by their boss's idea that everyone unanimously decides to follow him. Lucas is shocked by such an active and emotional reaction from the guys. Charlie says that the reason is that Lucas's goal has touched their hearts. Even he himself is considering quitting his job and taking up the serious pursuit of following his friend. Because real heroes follow only the call of their hearts. Lucas is happy that he will be able to continue working next to his friend. He immediately appoints Charlie as the vice president of the company and asks him to take care of him in the future. After this conversation, Lucas formed the organizational structure of the team and founded his own company in San Francisco for full-time operations. So they seriously invested in maintaining the reputation of the cryptocurrency and even created a special shopping center where you could pay for goods with source coins. With the original coin, you could buy games and various merch associated with them. So Lucas created an environment in which coins can be used for different purposes, and the number of miners in a few months exceeded 1.5 million. Thanks to the team's efforts, Lucas's company became the largest company in San Francisco in less than 6 months. A speech about the future of the company, which was recorded by the film crew, was uploaded to video hosting and became very popular. The company's growth has attracted the attention of financial market analysts. So one of them chose Lucas's company to implement his plans. Perhaps he thought that dealing with Lucas would be a piece of cake. Therefore, he decides to visit Lucas's company and makes an appointment. Meanwhile, in Lucas's company during a break, the employees discuss whether their company is strange. When many stop their activities due to the coronavirus, it not only earns, but also expands. At the same time, salaries, even at the entry-level level, are very high for the States. Plus, there are bonuses, allowances, and gifts. This is so good that employees do not believe their happiness and worry. However, not everyone supports this paranoia and enjoys comfortable working conditions. The vice president of the company is a leader who places team members in the right places to achieve maximum efficiency. And the president invests in breakthrough businesses and seems to have the gift of foresight. In addition, he is popular on the internet. When such individuals are at the head of the company, it can be quite difficult to fail. But their personalities are admirable and terrifying at the same time because they are unique specialists. One of these specialists just ridicules the other for his popularity on YouTube and asks for an autograph. He tries to get Lucas emotional, but Lucas strenuously ignores him. When Charlie finally laughs, his friend declares that he is happy with his fun. Lucas himself is embarrassed by his internet popularity, as he has been seen by people from all over the world, and he is not sure of his speech. However, Charlie believes that there is no need to be embarrassed, because the result turned out to be good. Thanks to this, many people learned about the existence of the seed coin, and Lucas's company was also able to announce its own direction of development in the field of cryptocurrency. They also have the power to change the perception of even the most distrustful people. Lucas is touched by his speech, but Charlie believes that he will still have to tease him with his career as a blogger more than once. Suddenly, Lucas's secretary enters the office and announces the arrival of a visitor. The men are surprised by the upcoming meeting and how nervous the girl is. The man who has been analyzing the success of Lucas's company in the market introduces himself as Jim. He is grateful that Lucas and Charlie received him despite the unexpected visit. Jim says that his work is an investment accelerator. Lucas wants to know what investments Jim is dealing with, but Jim refuses to give the names of the clients and is generally obscure. This makes Lucas wary since Jim does not give any specifics. If the company Jim works for was fine, he would happily reveal its name, but he keeps it a secret. Lucas immediately decides that it is not worth contacting Jim and decides to leave because he is not going to entrust his investment to someone else. However, Jim immediately begins to seduce Lucas with sums of tens of billions of dollars, which Lucas can lose if he rejects his offer. Tense, Lucas nevertheless decides to listen to what the guest wants from him. He behaves very confidently, as if Lucas really needs his services. He begins to explain the increasing value of cryptocurrency, since the amount of capital moved with the help of coins cannot be estimated. However, it is even better to get full access to this capital, because it will help to bring fabulous profits to the one who takes the risk. Picking up the conversation, Lucas asks if the man is sure that this is possible, and he explains that you just need to increase the price of the original coin. Since the public's trust in the seed coins is very high, he wants to use this and issue 10 billion of these coins. After that, use the press and connections to inflate prices and, by selling them on the stock exchange, easily earn hundreds of billions of dollars. This scheme infuriates Charlie and Lucas, as it seems very familiar. Lucas and Charlie only need to look at each other to realize that they are thinking the same thing. They realize that it was Jim who was the criminal who illegally controlled the flow of cryptocurrency and orchestrated its decline and growth. In the eyes of men, Jim looks like a villain who has now decided to lay a hand on their business. Charlie immediately gets up in irritation, not wanting to waste his time talking to the villain. But Lucas stays where he is, and he remains silent, showing no such aggressive reaction. It looks as if he, immersed in thought, doubts and wants to accept Jim's offer. He really thinks that a new acquaintance could be useful. And when implementing his scheme, Lucas will never need money again, no matter how much he spends. However, he also understands what his consent will lead to in relation to ordinary people. A slight smile touches his lips, becoming more insidious and cruel. Charlie is horrified that Lucas finds this inappropriate sentence interesting. Jim is already rubbing his hands, believing that Lucas has agreed to all his conditions. He offers to sign the contract right away, but Lucas stops him. You need to postpone the conclusion of the contract, because some difficulties are possible. Lucas is not going to act haphazardly in a matter that is important to both parties. Therefore, he proposes to conclude the contract later officially and in a suitable place. Although this reaction embarrasses Jim, he has no way to refuse. He reports that their company will soon arrange an official meeting. He leaves, grinning predatorily and contentedly at Lucas's decision. Saying goodbye, he is sure that the deal is already in his pocket, and he was able to intimidate and persuade Lucas to cooperate. Charlie's face darkens with a rage he can't hide. He slams his fist on the table and yells at Lucas to explain his behavior. He can't believe that his friend is going to accept such a criminal offer, even though he was talking about creating his own cryptocurrency ecosystem. Charlie doesn't want to think that Lucas's words could have been a lie to the world. But most of all, he is offended that his best friend lied to him. However, suddenly Lucas stops looking at Charlie excitedly and starts smiling. This annoys Charlie even more, as he does not understand the reason for this reaction. Getting up from the table, Lucas walks out of the meeting room. As soon as he opens the door, the film crew rushes inside. Charlie looks dumbfounded at the people lying on the floor. The guys from the film crew greet Charlie embarrassedly. Lucas explains that the team is here to shoot material for his vlog. As the ecosystem and development videos were a great success, Lucas decided to continue filming in-house. And their presence at the meeting was also planned in advance. Now they have a video of a meeting with a person involved in criminal fraud in the cryptocurrency market. Lucas apologizes to his friend for not having time to warn him. He just didn't know how to prepare Charlie for his plan. But for this, he receives a strong undercut and a blow from the furious Charlie. The guys from the film crew are watching the friendly brawl with interest. Charlie shakes off his hands in exasperation and straightens his clothes, looking at Lucas lying on the floor. Lucas is unable to cough after a strong chokehold. However, Charlie does not let him say a word and warns him not to do this to him again. Embarrassed by the misunderstanding, Lucas apologizes. The men discuss what to do next, and Charlie assumes that Lucas wants to turn the tape over to the police. However, Lucas believes that there is not enough evidence, and it is only enough for a scandal, and the criminal can even escape. Therefore, they decide to conduct their own investigation and accumulate as much evidence as possible. Then they can be handed over to the police and used to punish Jim and those behind him. At this time, Jim just arrives at the home of his employer. This is a luxurious Chinese-style house with huge, heavy doors that a man knocks on. It is open to him, but Jim is immediately speechless from fear. An angry, hungry tiger, the pet of his employer, comes out to meet him. Jim's boss himself slowly follows and apologizes for scaring him in vain. A man approaches his pet holding a chicken carcass in his hands because it's time to feed the tiger. Jim is covered with sweat from excitement and nerves. He is waiting for questions about the past meeting. As he thought, a Chinese man in traditional clothes immediately addresses him. He wonders how Jim's conversation with Lucas went, and Jim replies that he received a positive reaction to their offer. However, they did not conclude a fixed-term contract because Lucas wants to do it officially. The boss is furious that Lucas has asked for time to think. Such a delay disrupts his plans and he is not going to tolerate it. Enraged, he throws a chicken carcass in Jim's face, who asks for time to prepare a contract. The tiger, as if on command, with a growl rushes in the direction of Jim, who screamed. He catches the meat right next to the man's face, sinking his fangs into him with a menacing growl. Jim's boss looks down on him in fury. Because of this, Jim shakes in fear, crawling away on the floor. The Chinese explains that the most important thing when taming an animal is not to lose the initiative. It is also important not to forget to feed, and you should never allow yourself to think. After all, if the animal is not subordinate to the will of the owner, it will be devoured. Jim falls to his knees and begins to apologize to the chairman. He promises to contact Lucas and arrange a new meeting, as well as do everything possible to get him on their side. Under the threat of reprisals, he guarantees the boss a positive result. Pleased with this answer, the chairman calls the tiger to him and orders Jim to go to work. The Chinese strokes the purring tiger on the head, reflecting on the fact that Lucas turned out to be more than just a wild dog from a vassal country. He has brains, but in any case, he will have to obey. Meanwhile, at his company in San Francisco, Lucas calls Ellie. He says that he has not heard the girl's voice for a long time and misses her. He says that his affairs are in order and he is engaged in simple paperwork. Ellie's answer, on the other hand, makes him frown and shudder all over. After learning that Ellie is at home in New York, the man makes a decision. He leaves the office and hurries with his guards to the car. He brings Lucas and his companions to the airport, and soon the man flies to Ellie. A few hours later, a surprised Ellie opens the door for Lucas. The man is surrounded by a large number of boxes with gifts that he brought for the girl. He smiles contentedly, glad that he managed to surprise Ellie. Already in the apartment, he arranges the boxes while Ellie sits on the bed and watches him. Lucas states that he missed Ellie and came to take a break from difficult problems at work. The girl's glad that despite the heavy workload, her man found time to see her. But when Lucas asks how Ellie is doing at work, she is embarrassed. The Korean takes on a large number of new projects, but he does not know what Ellie is doing. The girl immediately falls from the bed to the floor in absolute despondency. She is sure that she will be demoted from a leader to a stone or a piece of gum. On one of her transactions, the losses amounted to 0.21%, and she is very worried. Such a reason plunges Lucas into complete bewilderment. He does not understand whether such a loss should be taken seriously at this level, but he thinks it could mean that Ellie is very professional about her work. Deciding to cheer up his girlfriend somehow, Lucas smiles and calls out to her, attracting attention. A tear-stained American woman, squelching her nose, looks back at him. Lucas asks if there's anything Ellie would like to do. He is ready to support her in any idea that she has in mind. To the provocative question about whether Lucas likes cats, the man does not know what to answer. He watches with interest as Ellie crawls under the covers. And then, with funny sounds, he digs under it, as if wearing something. Finally showing up, Ellie brags about her cute cat ears and meows. This causes an active reaction in Lucas, and he excitedly says that he will not only stroke her this evening. Embarrassed and satisfied, the girl looks up at him. The lovers, barely restraining themselves, get closer, preparing to kiss. But then, suddenly, Lucas's phone rings and interrupts them. As an annoyed Ellie sulks, Lucas picks up the phone, answering the phone. Dr. Henry calls and apologizes for taking the CEO out of business. However, he has important news that he would like to urgently report. The bio company has made great progress in developing a vaccine. And although clinical trials in the United States have yet to be undertaken, the immune effect of the vaccine is 90%. A joyful Lucas excitedly thanks the doctor for his work. When the call ends, Ellie gets Lucas's attention again. There is no point in holding back anymore, and the couple spends the night together. Lucas can't sleep. He reflects on the destruction of the economies of many countries and the human losses due to the coronavirus. However, the situation can be reversed if a vaccine against coronavirus appears. Then the market can return to growth again, which means that you need to come up with something in advance. Ellie wakes up and Lucas apologizes for being able to wake her up with his sighs and fidgeting. But then he asks the girl to help him create a portfolio to buy new shares. Ellie asks how much the man wants to buy and is speechless when Lucas says the amount of $12 billion. Lucas sincerely asks the girl for help because he needs her abilities. The lovers move to the kitchen, where they continue to discuss Lucas's plan. Ellie is shocked that Lucas asks her to work with sums such as $12 billion in stock and $500 million in call options. Lucas doesn't understand why the girl is so angry about his idea. Ellie bites her lips angrily and slams her palm on the table, asking if Lucas thinks her work is funny. The man does not understand what can cause such a violent reaction. Ellie crosses her arms over her chest and says that she knows full well that Lucas is a rich and successful investor. However, buying stocks and call options during a recession seems to be crazy and gambling. She does not understand on what basis the man made this decision. But if it's just intuition, then she, as a manager, wants to interfere with him. Lucas is silent for a while, disappointed, and then replies that in this case he will simply turn to someone else. He is not a fool and understands all the reasons for Ellie's worries. He knows that his plan does not make sense from the point of view of logic. But Lucas also understands that everyone dreams of getting rich, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he is too greedy and ready to move forward, even when everyone around him does not believe in him and tries to dissuade him from dangerous investments. But he was able to get this far because he was greedy, but he's willing to bet his money on faith in it. Ellie throws up her hands and gives up, knowing that her words won't solve anything. Instead, she orders the man to get ready. They need to go somewhere. She throws one of Lucas's shirts at him, telling him to change from home to a suit as soon as possible. She herself also begins to prepare for departure, digging on hangers with clothes. And when Lucas asks about the place where they are going, he replies that to her American company. Lucas and Ellie take a taxi for two and arrive on Wall Street to the building where Ellie works. A man looks around in shock at a skyscraper made of glass and concrete, which is one of the most famous buildings in New York. He admits that the building looks very majestic in person. Ellie tells the man to follow her and confidently goes inside. The reason why Ellie asked Lucas to come to her company is because of his portfolio, which is so large that she can't make a decision for herself. Lucas doubts that they will be able to meet someone influential, but Ellie reassures the man. On Wall Street, he is called the man who created an incredible company. And so it happens. An influential man greets Lucas, clarifying whether the way to the company caused any inconvenience. The man introduces himself as Jackson, and the officers around him smile kindly at Lucas. The company's employees bow to Lucas, which surprises him very much. The man is also surprised that Jackson, the head of the largest American financial corporation, is also Korean. Jackson laughs that when he learned about Lucas's visit, he couldn't help but go out to him in person. They escort Lucas to a comfortable office for breakfast. Lucas enjoys drinking hot tea in an interesting company. He praises the aroma of the drink, and Jackson reveals that the tea is brewed from the highest quality leaves. Without delay, Jackson notes that he heard about Lucas' idea from Ellie, but decides to confirm the accuracy of the information received. Clarifies if Lucas knows that if the option fails, they will lose their entire investment. Having received positive answers to all his questions, Jackson nods contentedly. As for buying stocks, Jackson is willing to put his name on hand and build a portfolio with the best conditions. Lucas is happy, but wants to know what the decision is about the call option. On this point, Jackson sadly shakes his head in refusal. He admits that it can be difficult for their company to support such an investment. Jackson looks at Lucas and Ellie dejectedly as he says this. Lucas doesn't understand what might be the reason for the complexity of his request for the global financial corporation. Jackson explains that just because they're going to have a hard time doesn't mean they can't give Lucas what he wants. Realizing that they want to get something from him in return, Lucas decides to clarify what Jackson's offer is. The financier says that their company has two conditions under which they will be ready to fully implement the idea expressed by Lucas. First, the decentralization of call options operations with other financial institutions in order to minimize the possible losses of his company. And secondly, Ellie's manager will be appointed as Lucas's special manager. Lucas wants to know what the reason for this decision is. Jackson replies that he just thought Ellie was the right fit for the job, and it was only natural to delegate important tasks to the best employees. Lucas can't figure out if the company found out that he and Ellie are lovers. The relationship with the American woman can be revealed in the course of their work, and Lucas worries about how this will affect his girlfriend. But Ellie agrees to become his personal manager if Lucas trusts her. Lucas is in mixed feelings. He is both touched and worried about her decision. Jackson nods contentedly, looking at the situation unfolding in front of him. He offers to make a portfolio if they both agree to the expressed conditions. After a business meeting, Lucas and Ellie go out into the park together to take a walk. Lucas twists in his fingers a pen given to him by the head of an American company in honor of the deal. Now he has good connections and great opportunities in the States. And Lucas is looking forward to the future to see what it will turn out to be. Suddenly, Ellie, walking a little behind, turns to her lover. He turns to the girl who wants to tell him something. In Ellie's eyes, you can read a strange confidence and determination. This cannot but be alarming. This causes Lucas to tense up and think that something bad has happened. They are standing in the middle of the park under the leaves falling from the wind, and their hearts are anxious. And a few hours later, Lucas, full of negative emotions, enters the house, where he is met by Charlie. The man is surprised that his friend returned to San Francisco from New York so early, as he took a vacation to have a good rest. But Lucas, ignoring him, goes into his room and closes the door behind him. Charlie does not understand what happened and why his friend is ignoring him. At this time, Lucas lowers himself to the floor and presses his back against the door. He recalls that Ellie told him that it was time to stop and end their relationship. Lowering his eyes, Lucas wants to ask the girl what the reason is. Ellie asks if her lover remembers the day they dined at a restaurant while traveling. Lucas, of course, remembers the first time they dined together. Ellie says that all this time she was grateful to Lucas for his really sincere support. He looked into her eyes and said that he believed in Ellie and her future, and smiled softly. And this conquered the American, who was not used to such a reaction, only to empty, meaningless compliments. Probably it was at that moment that Ellie fell in love with Lucas, opened her heart to him. Lucas listens with sad eyes to the girl's confession that his support gave him strength for work. She worked hard and did not sleep at night to prove her abilities. After that, she began to be trusted with large projects, and she received good growth and recognition from others. But then she realized that Lucas was still growing and had gone far ahead of her. She began to feel very strange and only today realized the reason. Ellie wants not just to be Lucas' mistress, but to fulfill her dream of being his manager. Lucas, who is standing in front of her, is experiencing heavy and painful emotions. He thinks for a few seconds about what to say to Ellie, who broke his heart. But in the end, she does not decide what to answer her and only laughs sadly and awkwardly. However, he quickly pulls a mask over his face and asks to take care of him in the future as a personal manager. The American sincerely thanks Lucas for the good memories and looks forward to working with him. They shake hands, thereby ending their relationship. At home, Lucas looks thoughtfully at his palm and doesn't know what to do next. However, Charlie does not allow him to be alone and knocks on the door. Lucas opens the door, saying that he wants to rest alone that evening. But Charlie bought him hamburgers, a luxurious double set. He convinces him that Lucas will not be able to resist. Lucas exhales and begins to laugh quietly because his friend is trying so hard to comfort him, so he agrees to eat together. Meanwhile, Jim is in his office in a rage throwing papers. He screams, cursing Lucas, and literally tears his hair out. The man does not understand how Lucas dared to deceive him and set him up. He already imagines how the chairman will subject him to cruel torture. This causes Jim to clutch his face in horror, sweating. He doesn't understand how to catch Lucas and not follow his lead. After all, if the chairman does not see that he is correcting mistakes, then the matter will not end with dismissal. At this time, one of Jim's subordinates enters Jim's office, interrupting his thoughts. The man yells at him, accusing him of not letting Jim come up with the right strategy. But the subordinate says that he wanted to report on what is written about Lucas in the newspapers. Jim immediately snatches the newspaper from the man's hands and avidly reads it. He begins to shake with laughter, which grows louder and louder. Jim smiles slyly, pleased that he has found Lucas's weak point. At this time, everything is once again very restless in business chats. It turns out that due to the sudden departure of a large number of foreign investors, all stock markets collapsed. But suddenly, Jack appears in the chats under his pseudonym 10 Billion One and urges his comrades not to give up. He convinces you to believe in the golden god that is Lucas and follow his investment decisions. After Jack's appeals, many people turn to buy shares. And as a result, the situation on the market quickly and significantly stabilized. Jim in his office looks at a screen where the chart shows the growth of stock buyers. He is dumbfounded and does not understand how the situation he was sure of could have completely turned upside down. And Lucas and Charlie read numerous declarations of love for Lucas and his investment methods on the investment bulletin board. Charlie does not understand what his friend has done, but he does not understand the reason. He tries to remember his last decisions, but believes that he really did nothing. Big changes are taking place in the world, and even a special report begins in the news. The World Health Organization says a new asymptomatic coronavirus is spreading. Therefore, a more serious quarantine is being introduced. The number of deaths is also growing. There is a shortage of morgues. Unable to withstand the ongoing quarantine, citizens began unrest. Cases of looting and robbery became more frequent. Looking at everything that happens on the news, Lucas frowns tensely. Therefore, he comes to his company as soon as possible to announce his new idea to his colleagues. In the conference room, he begins a teleconference with the bio company, namely Paul and Henry. He makes a statement that he plans to make a vaccine against coronavirus. To begin with, 300 million doses. From this information, Dr. Henry again gushes blood from his mouth. Lucas is no longer surprised and just tries to wait for the moment when the man clears his throat. Dr. Henry asks if he heard Lucas's words correctly, and he laughs, fully confirming his words about 300 million doses. Dr. Henry chokes on air and says it's reckless. Of course, he agrees that the vaccine needs to be produced as soon as possible, but it has only passed the first clinical trial. The possibility of side effects cannot be ruled out, and it would be better to wait longer. But Lucas easily says that in this case, they dispose of all the vaccine produced. Lucas has full faith in Dr. Henry and has enough resources to survive any difficulties. Such self-confident words shock Dr. Henry and Professor Paul. If they fail, then only Lucas will be the loser. But if they succeed, they can save more lives. Lucas asks if this reason is not enough to try. Henry notes that Lucas is standing too close to the camera, but he's glad he doesn't have tooth decay. He sighs, saying that in this case, he is not going to stop Lucas because he clearly likes risky investments. Lucas, chuckling, replies that one such investment is Henry's research lab. Therefore, he asks the doctor to take care of the production of vaccines. But Henry shocks Lucas by saying that he is only a scientist and has no knowledge of production. Lucas does not have this knowledge either, and therefore he urgently needs to come up with something. On the same day, the news that Lucas was producing a vaccine that had not passed the final clinical trials spread around the world. People wondered if Lucas wanted to monopolize the market and make a lot of money or save more lives. But after a while, the news that the vaccine had passed the second clinical trial conquered the whole world. Representatives of different countries began to discuss that it was necessary to conclude an agreement with Lucas, since hundreds of thousands of citizens were under threat to their lives. Representatives of the pharmaceutical industry began to discuss whether Lucas had decided on a company that would produce the vaccine. Everyone has a desire to win by signing Lucas an exclusive contract. But there were also those who wanted to undermine confidence in Lucas's business and cash in on his developments. One of the representatives of pharmaceutical companies, having a drink with the Minister of Health, thanks for the support provided. The minister himself is pleased with the cooperation with his company, since it also benefits him. The benefit lies in the large number of gifts that were given to him as a bribe. Then the chairman of the company says that the Korean company managed to develop a vaccine against coronavirus. He seems to speak happily, but he also expresses anxiety, absolutely feigned because of his own selfish interests. But the Minister of Health understands all the hints and requests and promises to deal with this situation.